Good. Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience. We'll just deal with the echo. Do you want me to keep talking until you sort it, James? Bear with us. You don't want to go the echo thing, no? Okay. Are we good? Thank you, James. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May meeting of the Executive. Ms Willis, any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. No, there are no apologies.
No apologies for absence. Okay. They're all here. Minutes from the previous meeting of the 8th of April and 6th of May. Are we happy to approve those minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest from any of the members. Gosh, hands are shooting up there. Let's start with Councillor Whitcroft.
No, I don't have any declaration of interest, apart from the fact that I'm the local member for Midget and Deepcut. I wonder if, in view of the fact there's a few people in the public area, if at some point you could just point out who's on the executive and how that works in terms of, because people sat here aren't going to be voting tonight, and it might be an idea to explain why, perhaps. Thank you.
No problem. I'll do that as soon as we finish the declarations. Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Leader. I have a non-pecuniary interest as relating to my register of interests, and I have discussed this with the monitoring officer in advance of this meeting, and also during the course of the last few months, I have met with regards to item 7. I have met with one of the bidders that had submitted a bid. However, I gave no firm position of sorts.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Any others? Oh, Councillor Batten.
Yes, I'm a member for representing Deepcut. So,
Councillor Whitcroft, it looks like you have a round two.
I've also had a number of representations, including just before this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garrett. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. You have to admit you were out of my eye line, so please feel free to keep doing that. Thank you. Between you and the screen over there, it's going to be a fun night.
Just to say, I have also been approached by some of the residents and have spoken to some of the residents as well.
It feels like we're moving along to Councillor Cope here.
Exactly the same declaration as Councillor Garrett.
And Councillor Rowlands.
The thing, I've been approached.
Okay, almost a full house. Any more? No. Maybe just to note that I was a long-standing customer of one of the bidders, but that relationship stopped a number of years ago. Okay, good. Councillor Whitcroft made an excellent suggestion, so let's just briefly do that. So this is the executive. The model we have in Surrey Heath for the members, benefit the members of the public, is it's a simple phrase that's used, which is a strong leader model. However, those powers are delegated to the executive. I decide to delegate them to the executive as leader of the council. So the executive makes the key decisions within the council. Some decisions are reserved for the council itself. You can see the details of that in our constitution. But matters such as that we're covering this evening are matters for this executive. The executive is led by myself as leader of the council. I have some portfolio elements underneath me, which are mainly administrative in nature or corporate resources in nature, including a number of non-executive functions, which means I can't interfere in those functions, simple terms. And then just briefly, if I just go round, maybe the executive just quickly say who you are and what you cover, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
I'm sure you all know, I'm Kel Finan-Cook and I'm the portfolio holder that will be dealing with most of the papers in the bundle this evening.
Good evening, my name's Alan Ashbury. I am the Deputy Leader. I am also the portfolio holder for the Built Environment and Regulation.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Finan-Cook. I'm the portfolio holder for Housing and Communities.
Hi, I'm Councillor Leanne McIntyre. I am the portfolio holder for Performance and Finance.
Councillor Morgan Rise, I'm the portfolio holder for Environment and Recreation.
Very good, thank you, councillors. And just for the benefit of the rest of the public, the rest of the members are situated on the outer ring here. They are here to support us in our decision making and are able to ask questions at various points of time until they test my patience, and then as chair I can shut them down. Yeah, I think that's broadly the situation, isn't it, colleagues? Yeah, okay, but that's rarely exercised. Okay, so we move on to public question time. And we need to get the order right here, I think, don't we? So I think it's a question one is submitted by, I'm going to potentially butcher that name. Did anybody know how to pronounce it? Michael Bridges, thank you. So by Michael Bridges, and I believe one of the officers is going to read this out on their behalf.
Thank you, Leader. So the question submitted by Michael Bridges. Please would the Council commit to communicate ahead of and effectively with residents directly impacted by any proposed marketing/sale of community assets. Please can this include non-digital channels, e.g. leaflets posted through the doors or notices on lampposts. Had this happened, residents would have felt valued and part of the process rather than having it done to them. For example, the idea of making Wood End Road a residents-only parking may have been put forward, as there is a fear that the traffic currently using the car park will simply use Wood End Road rather than using the more distant church car park, which is down a hill.
Councillor Finan-Cook, do you wish to respond?
The residents' comment is fairly put, and I've made the commitment to ensure that any future potential land marketing or disposal is communicated to both the ward councillors and the public more effectively. Whilst we're unable to undertake a direct mail or leaflet delivery, we can certainly look into the option of posting signage near or on any future sites. The purpose of any potential disposal of land is to create a capital receipt for the council, which is in financial distress, and we cannot incur further related costs. The new larger car park at St Barbara's, when added, is almost exactly equidistant from key locations. 13 bays have been added to the main road and a significant number of bays will be available at the new store by the roundabout in the future. It is the responsibility of all drivers to park legally and responsibly.
Thank you. I don't think we had a follow-up supplementary question to this one. Okay, so we'll move on to, thank you, Councillor. We'll move on to question 2. No, we won't, because he drops off on the list, doesn't he? Right, so where are we going next then? I think it's question 3 submitted by Ms Fard, is that correct?
No.
Okay, that's the order I have here.
It's 3 and 4 that were responses in writing.
3 and 4. Okay, are we running off different numbers sheets? Because I have this list. Which one? You have to go to Ms Fard.
Question 3.
We'll have to go to Ms Fard. There are issues with a couple of Ms Fard's questions which we'll pick up at the end, are we? So for now, we're going with the paper version, are we? Right, okay. And can you make sure we pick up on the issues at the end then? Yeah, okay. Ms Fard, I believe you want to ask your question in public, so to speak. So please carry on. When you're ready, I think you know how the mics work by now. So please ask your question.
Thank you. The council has considered sale of Wood End Road car park to ensure that its debt is reduced and that it would generate revenue. Can the council confirm if there are any other car parks with lower footfall than Deepcut car park, and if so, why those were not considered for sale?
Councillor Finan-Cook.
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you press your button again? Thank you, Ms Fard.
Thank you for your question, Ms Fard. Your question makes the assumption here that we have not considered any other car parks for marketing. It's important for you to note that this is the first tranche of properties which the executive are being asked to make a decision on regarding disposal. I'd also like to point out that the decision has not yet been made, and that is the purpose of this meeting this evening, for the executive to consider the facts and to make a decision in line with both best practice and our manifesto pledges. Car parks are not a statutory function of the council, meaning that as a discretionary service, we must consider whether these assets are profitable and providing the best value for the 90,000 residents of Surrey Heath.
Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. Ms Fard, do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you. I understand the council couldn't prepare answers to two of my questions, and so I can't ask them this evening, but I do have a supplementary question. Out of interest, how many tranches of properties are there for sale? And also, I've sent the leader of the council and others in this chamber a screenshot of our petition, 696 residents.
Sorry, that's two questions. So could you decide which question you wish to ask? The Constitution is very clear. You get to ask one question on every topic. You can ask up to 3 questions. The supplementary is the same. You get to ask 1 question. So please choose which question you want to ask. I know, for example, in a previous meeting there were 12 questions within 3 questions. I'm afraid that's not constitutionally correct.
That's okay. I will ask one question, and that is, how many tranches of properties are there for sale? Thank you.
Thanks for that supplementary. At the moment, there isn't a definitive number of tranches. We're considering all, we're looking into all properties owned by the council to make sure that they are profitable and useful for the residents of Surrey Heath. So I wouldn't be able to give you a definitive answer because there just isn't one at the moment.
I think the word tranche is probably a bit too formal. They'll come forward as the portfolio and the officers recommend.
As the decisions are made, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to just quickly hand over to the... Oh, you want to go to that one next to you, or you want to clarify Ms Fard's supplementary question? Let's clarify that now. So we have had a few issues with Ms Fard's questions in terms of processing, and Chief Executive is going to give an update on that.
Thank you, Leader. Yes. Ms Fard had multiple questions, and our Democratic Services officers have been working with Ms Fard to try and draw out what questions were going to be answered this evening. Unfortunately, with the passing of time, it wasn't possible for us to put 2 questions in front of the portfolio holder with sufficient time to be able to provide an answer, and certainly not with sufficient time to be able to publish that by our 2 o'clock deadline. As a consequence, we've agreed with Ms Fard that we'll provide written responses to those questions, and we will also publish those online as well, so they will be with the agenda pack for this evening's meeting.
Can I suggest, Mr Stevens, in the interest of the public interest here, that supplementaries are also allowed, provided they fit the criteria of 1 question per question that's asked, in a similar way with the word limit. Is that okay?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, absolutely. Okay,
so thank you, Ms Fard, for your patience on that. I think between us all, we were trying to make sure it was correct, and that sands of time ran away from all sides. So thank you for your patience on that. I know you worked late to try and do that, and the officers worked hard to try and process it, but people have day jobs, and it just became too much of a squeeze for everybody. So I think we should also just take a note that we maybe just refer that sequence of dates to the governance working group next time we have one of our meetings, Ms Willis, if that's okay, and we just see if we can manage the timelines in a way that is helpful for all parties going forward. Is that okay? Does that make sense to yourself? Yeah, good. Okay, right. There's a real chance of losing track today. Right, so we'll move on to question 4, which I think is submitted by Mr Knight, and again, I think the officers are going to read this one.
Okay, thank you. So the question is, can the executive provide clarification on the church car park, which is being proposed as the sole car park for the village? Are there 91 spaces, increase of 43 spaces, as the village will need increased parking to cope with the existing village and the new development? We have been advised there is only 61 spaces, with 10 being reserved for the church.
Thank you, Ms Willis. On behalf of Mr Knight. Councillor Finan-Cook.
The car park at St Barbara's will have a minimum provision of 60 spaces with 4 disabled bays and initially 7 electric car charging points. Noting the village green feel of the new layout, it is anticipated that more residents would walk or cycle routinely for short journeys. We're currently working to ascertain if we're able to increase the quantity of spaces in the long term, should it be thought prudent in due course. There are no explicit provisions for spaces solely for the use of the church. There will inevitably be instances in which the church will require more spaces, such as weddings and funerals. In general, we envisage demand on the car park will fluctuate through the day-to-day and the week in the seasons. It is not possible at this stage to forecast any pinch points arising that will require specific management. St Barbara's is one of many new parking facilities within the village for visitors and residents, including at the Frog, the sports pavilion and the new store, in addition to street parking available on Mindenhurst Road outside the school pick-up drop-off periods.
Thank you. Did we have a supplementary on this one that Mr Knight wants to ask? Would you like to go to the microphone? Yeah, please do. You're very welcome. You just need to press the button and then when you finish, press it again if you don't mind.
So bear with me, I'm not a public speaker, but just on the clarification of the terms, they're not going to be the same. Is that a yes or no? They're going to be the same as they are now? And is sorry, I beg your pardon. You have advised on the minimum of 60 spaces. The Wood End Road car park has 48. The Wood End car park has been the village car park for decades. Does the council believe that the increase of 12 spaces, because that's what we make it, is sufficient for the additional 1,500 houses that have been built in the new village alone?
By all means, clarify.
Yeah, sorry, could you please just clarify the first part of your question there with regards to terms?
Let me read it again. You've advised that there's a minimum of 60 spaces. The Wood End car park has 48 as it stands at the moment. The car park has been the village car park for decades. Does the council believe the increase of potentially 12 spaces is sufficient for the additional 1,500 houses that has been built in the village?
Okay, thank you for that supplementary. I think, yeah, if you could just pop your button down, that's brilliant, thank you. As we've said, that there is an increase of 25% in the parking provision within the actual car park, as well as the on-street parking, as well as parking available at the Frog, and it is believed that over time, more people will be walking and cycling due to the village feel within Deepcut now.
Thank you, Mr Knight, for your question. We move on now to question 2 by Mr Bridges again. It's just the sequence we do things. We may come back to you, Mr Knight, I'm not sure. Just bear with us. It's just, we go one after the other, well, it's just the rules of the Constitution. And I know there's a few Constitution watchers here, so we need to get ourselves correct. So if we go on to question 2, I think somebody's going to read that from our side. Mr Stevens again.
Thank you, Leader. So the second question from Mr Bridges. I understand that part of the LGR proposal includes an application to central government to have existing debts written off. Please would the council halt these proposed sales until the LGR is completed?
Councillor Finan-Cook.
Thank you. There is no commitment from the government to write off the debts of authorities, nor is there a commitment yet to see through the local government change process. To bury our heads in the sand now regarding our financial situation and adopt a wait-and-see approach, as the previous administration did, and certain campaigners are suggesting still, would be irresponsible of us as an administration. Our manifesto promise on which we were elected was to make council property work, which included both the promise to identify ways to reduce the negative equity across our portfolio and to ensure that council properties are either productive financially or they are sold.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm just going to chip in a little bit on that myself because I'm closest to the LGR proposal, having worked with Mr Stevens and the other leaders around Surrey. There is no firm commitment on behalf of the government to write off any debts at the moment. What they have said is that they understand that Woking's debt is unserviceable by themselves or probably multiple clusters of authorities around them. So they are mindful to come to arrangements where successful unitarisation can be launched. But at this moment in time, there is no commitment to write the debts off. I think one of my colleagues is going, along with Mr. Stevens, later in the week to Reigate in anticipation of coming back with bags of gold, but more in hope than anything else. So if we move on to question 5, which I think is back with yourself, Mr. Knight. Would you like to read it yourself? And we'll do the same process as last time. You're very welcome. So who's reading question 5 for Mr. Knight?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, second question submitted by Mr. Knight. Can the executive commit to retaining the church car park as free parking and the same terms as parking at the Wood End Road car park? If not, can they advise on what the parking terms will be?
Thank you. Councillor Fine and Cook, response, please.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Knight. The car park will remain free to use for residents and visitors. We will work with village stakeholders to maximise flexible use of the car park, which may require protocols for temporary operational interventions, for example, weekend weddings, weekday funerals, etc. It's for the parking team, in conjunction with the portfolio holder, to determine if a permit system would be implemented for businesses wishing to use the car park as part of their commercial activities.
Thank you. Mr. Knight, would you like a supplementary on that one? Yeah, when you're ready. No rush.
So basically, can you confirm that the terms will not be the same, yes or no?
I think my answer was pretty clear there, Mr. Knight. The terms will be the same, as in it will be free parking for residents and visitors, but it will need to be reconsidered or possibly looked at if the car park is overused by commercial activities.
Thank you. And there's that phrase I can struggle to get my mouth around, which is it will be free in perpetuity, e.g. for a long time. And that will be part of the agreement with the relevant department of the MOD as part of the transfer process. Right, I think we move on again to question 6 of Mr. Knight. Are you happy for them to read again? Yeah, we're on a roll here, aren't we? We'll get this going slickly soon. Is it me again, Ms. Willis? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the final question is, can the executive advise if they have considered the offer to buy Wood End Road car park and keep it as a car park rather than make it another development? If so, why would they not agree on this compromise?
Please, Councillor Fine and Cook.
Thank you. In conjunction with the Head of Property and Economic Development, the Section 151 officer, the Monitoring officer, the Planning officer, the CEO and the Leader of the Council, I have reviewed all bids submitted, their value and any conditions suggested. It is important for us to meet the legal threshold of best value for all Surrey Heath residents. The recommendation within the annex of this executive paper reflects the offer which was considered best to meet that criteria.
Ms. Knight, yeah, very welcome.
So can you confirm what you've based your legal threshold on, best value for Surrey Heath residents? Does this override the best interests of Deepcut Village when the compromise has been offered to buy the car park and keep it as a car park for the village?
So, thank you for your question. Do you mind pressing the button again? I think we are not experts on best value, so can I refer over to the monitoring officer for some input on the definition of best value and how we balance different objectives within what we're given by in the government frameworks.
Thank you, Lisa. The Local Government Act imposes a duty on all local authorities to deliver best value. This is where a council must demonstrate that it's making arrangements that are economic, efficient and effective and securing continuous improvement. So it's a mixture of economics, efficiency and effectiveness, which is covered by that covers the best value obligations of a local authority.
Thank you very much. Did that cover off all of Mr. Knight's questions, Councillor Fine and Cook?
I believe so.
I think it did. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you all for your public questions. We've been encouraging them, so thank you for taking the time to ask them. We will get back to you, Ms. Fard. I think it's within 5 working days. Is that correct? Oh, apparently it's 7 working days.
We'll commit to that sooner.
But we'll do the best we can, okay? And then obviously we made the commitment around supplementaries as well, seeing we've had a slightly inelegant process today. Okay, so we move on to the next item on the agenda. Surplus land sales 361 to 365 London Road, land to rear.
Question by members.
I'm terribly sorry. I apologise. That's what happens when you do it digitally and don't tick it off on a piece of paper, yeah. No, you're absolutely correct. Thank you for raising a point of order, as always, Councillor Rise. Yeah, well done. So we'll go to item 6, questions by members, please. We've got Councillor Rowlands and Councillor Garrett, and Councillor Garrett and Councillor Whitcroft. So Councillor Rowlands, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Could one of the relevant executive working groups review the levels of young persons' poverty? And this was featured in a recent government report for the Old Dean, St Michael's and Watchetts in particular, the Old Dean, those wards, and come back to this council with a full report on what has been highlighted as having over 20% of the young people in those wards being defined as living in poverty.
Yeah. So, Councillor Rowlands, I don't believe that's in scope for this council. What I'll commit to do is, and therefore we're unable to provide you with an answer as it's not an executive function of the council. What I think we're committed to do is to re-listen to your question. I'm happy if you want to reframe it again and see if we come to a different conclusion. But I don't think it's an executive function. I don't think it's a responsibility of this council. So it may well be that we can support a question going to the relevant Surrey County Council officers, both at the portfolio level and locally here, to try and get an answer for you. But in the interest of giving you fair shout, do you want to redo the question and see if we come to a different conclusion on the second listening, please? Could you go again, Councillor Rowlands? Say the question again. That's fine. Say the question again, please, Councillor Rowlands, yeah?
Do you ask it again, because they weren't quite sure whether it's an executive function or a council function? Well, this is the question is based on a report by government in the last week or so, which has highlighted, if you go through the report, particular wards of this council where over 20% of the young people living in those wards are living in defined poverty. It's interesting to see that this council doesn't feel it has any responsibility for that. I would feel that as a council we should be concerned about that, and there are aspects of what we do that should reflect that particular concern. So the question, it is really what the response of the council is going to be to that governmental report.
So, thank you, Councillor Rowlands. So I'll give it my best shot. So we have tried to engage with Surrey County Council for the reduction of poverty in our borough, with particular focus on the areas you've spoken about. The areas you spoke about, exactly the areas that we spoke about with them. I think from memory we met Mark Nutty, wasn't it, around some of this, and one of his incredibly smart guys that does a load of data crunching, the name of whom I've forgotten, but he's an inspirational character. So it is very much in our minds. I guess my point is that we are not directly responsible in this council for interventions with young people. That is a children's services activity, and obviously family support, which would have supported into some of those spaces, was taken off us in the last 6 months or so last even 3 months or so, by Surrey County Council. So our ability to actually support those families and those young people in the area you're speaking about is limited as a function of the funding that we get from central government to do that with. Obviously, one of the things we do is we provide substantial grants to Citizens Advice Bureau, which will be supporting some of those families that in turn support the young people. We obviously support other bodies where we can, but in terms of the funding stream to directly address poverty in the areas you're talking about, in the segment you're talking about, it is primarily Surrey County Council's responsibility, and they have the money to do it. However, Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook might be able to supplement with some further comment.
Perhaps the leader thinks I'm a bit softer. What I would say, and it is slightly repetitive to what the leader has just said, Councillor Rowlands, is that we do support a number of organisations that work in the area of poverty relief, as you know. What I'm very happy to do and commit to doing is to have some dialogue with Cash and see if we can hone in on some youth statistics around poverty and see what information they hold. And I think that it's absolutely a conversation we're very happy to continue to have with our county colleagues. So if you can leave that with us, that would be great. And I thank you very much for bringing that question to the floor this evening, because I think it is incredibly important that that area is looked at.
Thank you, Councillor. And maybe just to add that I myself have shared information with publicly available information around deprivation in Surrey as a whole, but with a focus on Surrey Heath in the last couple of weeks or so with interested parties that are trying to support them. I know, Councillor Cope, you're currently our nominated member for Cash, and maybe we'll come back. Maybe you could give an update later when we discuss some of the outside bodies, seeing as some of those are a competitive tender this year, and we can build that into the mix as well, from their side, and influence them from Councillor Cope's side. Because I think whether it's yourself, Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Cope, Councillor Finan-Cook, myself, we're all trying to do the best where we can, but we are not funded by the taxpayer to do an awful lot in that space. Okay, so other members, I lost track there. Councillor Garrett, you're next on the rank.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. And before I ask my question, I'd like to thank Councillor Rowlands, because I wasn't aware of that report, and I just Googled it while we've been sitting here. And my ward, Old Dean, is actually third on that list, so it would be something I would be interested to hear about as well. My question actually is something you mentioned, but I want to ask it as a public question so we can make sure that it is also minuted. In view of the issue this afternoon with the amount of time between a question being asked and the timescale for obviously officers' portfolio, may I propose when we take it to governance that we increase, because 3 days, working days, is actually a really short period of time. I just looked at it on the Constitution; it is really short. So maybe we need to look at that and increase that to 5 or 7, whatever we discuss. But I certainly agree with you. That's something we maybe should take away and look at the governance working group. Thank you.
Happy to commit to do that. Anything we could do to make sure we are accessible and we get the questions, but we are able to do it in an appropriate way so we get the quality answers as well. Okay, we move on to Councillor Garrett, please. Councillor Whitcroft, you've got ahead.
Thank you. Could I just refer back to April's executive meeting when the portfolio holder gave us an update on the position with the Surrey Heath Lottery? I wondered if you might be able to update us with the position, please.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. Yes, I can, actually. So I'm pleased to report that dialogue between Gatherwell, who run the lottery, and voluntary services have come to an agreement, and they will be taking on, VSNS will be taking on the running of the Surrey Heath Community Lottery, which is obviously great news for the organisations that benefit, and we've been very happy to be able to facilitate that dialogue. Thank you for your question.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Garrett, did you have a question? You didn't. That was okay. Good. I think Councillor Quinn online, you did have a question or didn't have a question? Councillor Quinn? Okay, you're up. The floor is yours.
Sorry, Councillor MacDonald, that's for a later part of the agenda, my question. So I'll save it for that part.
I misled you by going on to the other item by mistake. No problem. We'll come back to it. Any more questions from members? No? Good. Okay. Then we will move on to item 6. He says with a sense of dread there, thinking he's made a mistake again. To item 6, surplus land sales 361, 365 London Road, land to rear Camberley. Councillor Vino Cook, I think this is yours again.
Thank you. This paper is asking the executive to approve the disposal of a small plot of land behind 362 and 365 London Road. To continue to hold this parcel of land would incur unnecessary revenue costs. This land is of no value financially or operationally to the residents of Surrey Heath, but it is to the preferred bidder. And I'm happy to take any questions anyone may have on the paper.
Okay. I'll get one in first, Councillor Rowlands, if you don't mind. I'm just wondering whether the monitoring officer could confirm the appropriate legal processes were followed to market these assets to date.
Thank you, Leader. I confirm that in my legal opinion, as monitoring officer for the council, that the correct legal process was followed in marketing this site. Marketing is a preliminary step. It doesn't commit the council to anything. Nothing's finalised at that point. Marketing is a day-to-day operational function of officers, and the council's constitution provides a general delegated authority to officers to undertake marketing. Although it doesn't use the word marketing, what it actually says is that it's delegated to head of legal services to agree all leases, licences, contracts and other legal documentation in relation to the administration of the council's estate and property portfolio. There are 4 exceptions to that delegated authority, and the one that applies to this item is that authority to dispose of a site of a value of 25,000 and plus above needs to be authorised by the executive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Boateng. Okay, so I've got on the rank Councillor Whitcroft, Councillor Rowlands, Councillor Quinn at the moment, and Councillor Ashbury. We'll put you somewhere in the middle, shall we, Councillor Ashbury? And Councillor Feenan-Cook. Okay. We'll maybe go executive, non-executive, executive, non-executive. How about that? So, Councillor Whitcroft, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leader. My query is a technical one, insofar as am I the only member that doesn't have a copy of Appendix 2 and 3, for that matter?
I think it's winging your way.
I have a copy of Appendix 3, but I don't have a copy of 1 or 2. I'm looking at... Yeah, I know.
Stand by, Councillor. They're just... we'll just see where we stand.
Oh, just to clarify that, I'm looking at modern government.
Yeah.
And I can't find it on there.
I shall have a look myself, Councillor.
Right.
If I may, just on that point,
I can see an update at the bottom, Councillor. It says Appendix 2 to Item 7. Is that the one? No, that's 6 we're on at the moment. So that doesn't work.
Leader.
Yep.
It may be, what I would advise members, if you're looking online, is that you need to be logged into Surrey Heath Private, because it is a the appendix would be as a Part 2 appendix. Oh.
Right, so here's what we do. Right, one second. Right, so Councillor Whitcroft is saying...
I've now been provided with a copy, so I'm quite happy. So I'm going to shut up. Thank you.
Yes, no, they are in there. They are. They're just not
Right,
in the right order,
hang on.
that's all.
Can I order... I've always wanted to say that, by the way. Councillor Whitcroft was raising issues with the appendices to Item 6. So can somebody that's in Modern Gov Private
It's there.
Yeah, highlight where it is. Is it
After 3.
after item?
They're just in the incorrect order.
They're in the
modern
incorrect
draft, that's all.
order. Okay, so therefore, is everybody, all the members are now clear on where they can find this information? Councillor Whitcroft, did you have a question? No. Thanks you for clarifying.
I would have liked to have questioned the appendices, but since I didn't have them, I can't.
Yeah. So maybe it's relevant for this item and the next item as well. Obviously, there are some sensitive matters that are held in the exempt sections. So I think it's in the interest with the public members here, members of the public here, that we stay in open session. So can I ask members to be extremely careful in their questions? These papers have been available to members for over a week, so if there was a technicality in relation to the exempt areas, you more or less had a lot of time to ask it. Obviously, the executive that makes the decisions here has already had that time and would have asked any questions it needs to, or any clarifications. So if we need to be clever in our questions and have a couple of rounds of being clever, then let's do that, but let's avoid going into exempt. Just for members of the public's awareness, exempt is where we discuss confidential matters, particularly related to finances, people, etc. We want to avoid that because we have to throw you all out, unfortunately. So that's why we want to try and keep an open session. Okay, so with that minor riot act, we'll move on to Councillor Ashbury on the non-executive executive rota. Councillor Ashbury.
Thank you, Leader. I listened to Ms Boateng's answer. Can you explain the actual process? I understand the legal answer you gave, but could you explain the process that has brought both this item and the following item that we are discussing tonight to here, and how it fits within the constitution of this council, the law of the land, and financial regulations for both this and the next item on the agenda? Could you explain how that process works, please? Thank you.
So there are wide powers under the Local Government Act 1972, which enables all local authorities to buy and sell land. So it's a general power that's provided under legislation. And there's also another power that's provided in the Localism Act 2011, which provides a general power of competence, and that also could be used as the power for local authorities to buy and sell land. With regard to the council's constitution, there are powers within the constitution for the executive to authorise the sale of land over £25,000. The usual process would be that under the delegated powers in the Constitution relating to the administration of the council's estate and property portfolio, officers can undertake a marketing exercise in order to gauge interest and gather information in order to prepare a report to the executive so that a decision can be made on selling. So that's the process in terms of legislation, and then it's within the Constitution there are powers for administration, including marketing, and then for the executive, following a report, to make a decision as to whether or not a disposal takes place. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Boateng. And thank you, Councillor Ashby, for your question. Councillor Rowlands, I think you were next.
Land 361, 365 London Road. Just to be clear that that's what I was actually talking about. I think this is a feature of this particular part of Camberley, the older part of Camberley, where there are pieces of land which are almost a hangover. And this one really is a hangover really from the beginning of Camberley as a settlement. It's a wasteland which has been turned into an unofficial car park. And it really needs, something seriously needs to be done about it. I think probably what's being proposed might be the best way forward, but there is a sad history about how it's being misused and how it's affecting the commercial activities of those around that particular site. So it's been misused, there's been fly tipping, bad parking, etc. And even at this stage, it's not absolutely clear about aspects of ownership as well. But I think probably if we go ahead with what we're talking about and sale, this might be the best way forward, because the possibility of a competent purchaser doing something realistically about this part of land. The use of it has caused the person who is one of the applicants to purchase it a great deal of trouble over the last 20 years. And this would, I think, be a reasonable way forward if we progress in the way that might be suggested. But it is one of the features of this particular part of Camberley that there are these pockets of land which nobody really takes ownership of and nobody looks after properly. I know we have to work with accent on this, but it is growingly a serious problem. And it really is to some extent affecting the whole demeanour of this part of central Camberley. Thank you, Chair.
Well, thank you for your supportive comments with regards to the resolution there, Councillor Rowlands. I agree, has been problematic in terms of fly tipping and road parking, and I'm sure that under new ownership, should we take the decision to dispose of the land this evening, that will improve greatly and therefore improve the area. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I've got Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook next.
Thank you, Leader. I'm afraid this is another one for Ms Boateng, and I'm sorry that my back is to you. And for the benefit of the people in the gallery, Ms Boateng is our monitoring officer and is responsible for our legal services, so this is why this particular question is directed to her. Could you please clarify when a consultation process is required legally and why the items on tonight's agenda didn't fall into that requirement, please?
Thank you. So there are three situations when a local authority is required to undertake consultation. The first is if it's required by statute. The second is if there's been a promise by the local authority to consult on a particular issue, or whether through history there's been an established practice of consulting on a particular topic. And none of those scenarios apply in this situation, so there was no legal requirement to undertake consultation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I know there were two over here, but I think we've got Councillor Quinn online. Please, Councillor Quinn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leader. Firstly, I'd just like to echo Councillor Rowlands' comments. This is a piece of random land in Camberley. And before I ask my question, I should declare that I have spoken to one of the bidders. I think Councillor Rowlands mentioned that they're a neighbour to the site and they've had problems with it. My question is really about access for all the businesses and properties around the site. I just want to ask the portfolio holder if they're happy that the sale of this site won't impact neighbouring businesses or those living around there, that they will still have access to their properties, and that any concern about a change of ownership for this parcel of land is unnecessary. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments echoing Councillor Rowlands' sentiments there, Councillor Quinn. I'd like to just bounce this question, clear and concise answer with regards to rights of way.
In Councillor Finan-Cook's defence, we can't see your badge from our angle, so she couldn't see the surname. So
yes, no problem. I have looked at the various titles to surrounding properties. Off the top of my head, I mean, all the way around, certainly on London Road and the top end of Frimley Road, there are rights of way for those properties to have access around the rear on a thin strip around the edge. So it should be possible for those properties to have some form of access or another round the back to their properties.
Very good, thank you. I've got, while you've got the microphone, if you don't mind, Mr. Hind, I've got a quick follow-up, which is, can you explain the concept in simple layperson's terms of an easement, please, and whether we should be concerned about it in our legal decision-making, noting that the annex is exempt, so we don't want to go into too much detail on that, but just conceptually, should we be concerned about this?
Yes, for those who are unfamiliar with easements, so an easement is a right benefiting one piece of land, which is known as the dominant land, that is enjoyed over another piece of land owned by someone else. That's the servient land. Usually an easement allows the owner of the dominant land to do something on the servient land, such as use an access road or run underground pipes and cables through it. That's a positive easement. More rarely, an easement will limit what the owner of the servient land may do on its land, and that's a negative easement. An example of that is that the servient owner might be prevented from interfering with the dominant owner's right to light. There are certain conditions which must be satisfied before an easement can exist. There must be a dominant and a servient piece of land. The right must benefit the dominant land. The dominant and servient parcels of land must not be owned by the same person. The right must be capable of being granted by deed and must therefore be within the general nature of a right capable of being easements and sufficiently definite. That helps.
So do you feel we should be concerned or not concerned on balance in our decision making today?
Neighbouring property owners have rights of access round the back over a sort of path to get there, plus the access road that gets round to the rear. So whoever owns it will have greater control over parking, and they'll have probably greater oversight than we do. So in terms of rights of way, yeah, the neighbouring owners have those, so they won't be completely restricted from rear access to their properties.
Okay, thank you. Did I see Councillor Cope ticking things off there as we went? Is that your area of specialisation? Okay, there we go, Mr. Hind. Keep that one while you can, treasure it. I don't get those. Right, if we move on to, I think it was Councillor Rise, I noted yourself, Councillor Garrett, and then we've also got Councillor McIntyre, so I might split up the executive there. Oh, and Lisa, right, thank you. Off you go, Councillor Rise.
Thank you, Leader. It is more along the lines of the comments that Councillor Rowlands and Councillor Quinn have made with regards to kind of the plot, and was wondering if the Head of Property and Economic Development could say whether the plot that we are looking at has any obvious utility value to the wider community, apart from it being, as has been described, and as well as beyond the businesses that use it periodically, informally. So I was just kind of wondering, is there any community benefit to the site being held in public hands?
None at all, in my view.
Short and sweet. Thank you, Mr. Breeden. So we move on to Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Leader. It'll only be a quick one. So, assuming this goes through tonight, and I understand all the other points have been made, because of the encroachment issue that had previously been highlighted, if it's sold, there's no chance of that coming back and biting the council, sorry, I'll rephrase that, causing the council any grief, because as soon as that's been sold, that is written off, that issue.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Garrett. That ceases to be Surrey Heath's problem and becomes an issue between the buyer and the encroacher, if that's the word. Thank you.
And maybe before I forget, if I could thank the relevant officers that have been involved in preparing this report, and Mr. Hind specifically around the legal analysis that a number of us will have read under the exempt part. Thank you for that, much appreciated. Very, very clear. even though I didn't understand what an easement was, but that's by the by. So we move on, thank you for that, Councillor Garrett. We move on to Councillor McIntyre.
Thank you. Another question. Sorry, Mrs. Boateng. Could you just explain what the role of the executive working groups are within the council constitution and how we routinely use them? I think there's a bit of misunderstanding about how they work.
Yes, so the working groups are created by, they're called the executive working groups, and they're created by the executive. They consist of members who are cross-party representation, and they have no decision-making powers. Their role is for officers to discuss and talk through the administration process that they've delegated powers for, proposals and options, and they're utilised as a steer for officers, but they have no decision-making powers at all. I hope I've answered your question. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook, please.
Thank you. This is another question to offer some clarity, I think, for those watching, and it's for you, Mr. Breeden. Could you please explain to us what a red book valuation is and why it's relevant to our decision making this evening, please?
Thank you. Red book valuation is a formal opinion of value in accordance with the statements of valuation practice set out by the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. Surrey Heath procures annual valuations which are used in our accounts, and the valuation also provides us a guide as to whether the council is achieving best value, which we've heard a lot about this evening.
Councillor McIntyre.
Leader, could you do your microphone? Thanks. So just to follow up on the best value term, I'm not sure who is best to answer it, but would someone be able to, probably Mrs. Boateng, might be you again, help us with defining what best value means? And as a bit of a supplementary question to that, because value and finance sometimes come together, got a question from Mrs. Radford behind me. Would you mind talking a bit about the council's position on what we would do and what could we do with the capital receipts and the impact on our finances?
I'll start with the question about best value. So as I said earlier, on the Local Government Act, councils have a duty to make arrangements for economic, so the finances of the council, efficiency and effectiveness, and strive for continuous improvement. In terms of selling land, the Local Government Act requires that local authorities get the best consideration that can reasonably be obtained. So that would be financial as well as other environmental considerations for the area and the community. There are powers for local authorities to sell at an undervalue, but obviously the idea is that best consideration is obtained. The undervalue rules, there are regulations which monitor those, and over 2 million undervalue, so that's nothing that we're talking about here. The local authorities are required to get the Secretary of State's consent to an undervalue at that scale. So I hope I've answered your question. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So capital receipts bring cash into the council as we're selling fixed asset. It can only be used to fund capital expenditure. It cannot be used to fund day-to-day revenue expenditure. So the capital receipts can be used to fund expenditure in the capital programme, planned expenditure, and that will reduce the need for borrowing and avoid increasing the debt interest payable for future. We can repay debt, which will result in lower interest, or as a, I suppose, catalyst to what I've just said, we can use that money as essentially an investor save to fund transformation costs. But because that is, in essence, revenue expenditure, we need to follow certain protocols set by the government to enable us to do that. So that is the only exception on capital receipts where we can use it on what can be termed as day-to-day expenditure.
Okay, I think that's probably, okay, Councillor Cope, you haven't had your moment, so please.
Thanks. Sorry, I wasn't going to, but it just builds on Councillor McIntyre's point. I just wanted to clarify with the monitoring officer that when we talk about best consideration, in my understanding, we're not talking about the highest amount of money, and it is for this executive body to determine what best consideration is when selling assets. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, that's right. So best consideration does include financial, but it's also other considerations for the area and residents. So it's wider than just financial. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. I think you said something earlier about, was it effectiveness, efficiency and continuous improvement? Was that right? Did I get the...
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Economic efficiency and continuous improvement.
Thank you for highlighting it to Councillor Cope. It's a balanced judgment. You're correct. Okay, so I think we've had enough on this one to bring it to a conclusion. What I heard was that we followed a legal process in the view of the monitoring officer in terms of the marketing and the dealings of the working group. We've got the relevant legal powers to do this. We have clarified the legal situation around this particular piece of land. It was interesting to hear the support of the ward councillors around this, these small strips being abandoned and us not necessarily being the natural owner of this asset in order to make maximum benefit for it. And I think we also heard that on an ongoing basis, maintenance of this piece of land is a concern to us as it is a fly tipper's paradise. Is that roughly where we got to with some of that?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. So I propose we move to the resolution. Are we agreed with the resolution as noted? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, we move to item 7. Hang on a wee minute while I flick pages. So, right, so surplus land sales, disposal of Wood End Road car park Deepcut. Just worthy of noting that the inputs of the monitoring officer and the Section 151 officer, who are both statutory officers of the council, along with the chief executive, I think in principle apply to this item as well. So I don't envisage us covering some of that ground again. If there are any specifics members or members of the executive wish to highlight, then we'll do so in the normal ebb and flow of things. However, Councillor Fine and Cook, would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you, Leader. Before I say anything further, I would like to bring everybody's attention to an error that was included in this paper. Wood End Road actually has 48 spaces as opposed to the 40 that were reported in the document, which then creates an increase in parking over at the St Barbara's site of 25%, not the 50% stated in the original document. The paper is asking the executive to approve the disposal of the car park at Wood End Road in Deepcut. So much discussion has taken place in this chamber this evening regarding the proposal. I don't feel it is needed for me to deliver a lengthy speech regarding the paper, just to say that I'm happy to answer any questions which members feel haven't been adequately answered during public and members' questions, particularly as so much misinformation has been muddying the waters regarding this issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook. Members, who has questions on... Gosh, I thought you were giving me a list of people who wanted to ask questions already. That would be quick. Members, who would like to raise any points on this item? Councillor Betton was up first, so let's continue the same logic. Councillor Betton, and I saw Councillor Rise, and I think I saw Councillor McIntyre, but we may bump you in the queue depending on who else comes forward. Oh, Councillor Cope, thank you. You're in the middle there.
Sorry.
And Councillor Whitcroft. So we have executive, non-executive, executive, non-executive. Well done, people. Right, so we'll start with, and did we have anybody on the TV screens? No. Okay. So Councillor Betton, please, let's start with you.
Thank you. What I'm going to say is not going to be a shock because you've heard it before. But first of all, I must make it clear that I fully understand the need for the Council to raise funds from the sale of assets surplus to requirements. We have to have a balanced budget, at least until the time the new unitary authority comes into being. After that, SHBC will cease to exist, and it'll be up to others to make decisions for the people of Deepcut. I will not be one of them, so I have no axe to grind, no favour to curry in this matter. What I am concerned about is what is right for the people who elected me and whom I still represent. According to paragraph 1.3, the acceptance of an unconditional bid is preferred to expedite the sale. The original call for bids stipulated that the car park would remain as a car park for a period of 2 years after the sale. However, the bid recommended for acceptance, according to 1.2 in the table at the end, is conditional on the removal of the 2-year clause. So the process has not, in my view, been consistent. Reading the bid summary, and I'm not going to divulge anything that's exempt, but it's in Annex 2, and it is clear that the 2-year requirement has been removed as part of a negotiation between officers and the bidder. Were there negotiations with other bidders? I don't know. One of the bids, that of Mr. Knight, who we have heard from this morning, this evening.
Sorry, Mr. Betton, that was exempt information.
What?
You just
I've
said.
spoken to Mr. Knight before, and he has said that he doesn't mind his name being...
Fine.
Okay.
I would have appreciated had you made the officers and myself aware of that, but that's fine. Please
Okay.
continue.
So I'm not saying anything that...
But you understand my intervention, yeah? So
Yeah, I do.
So that's fine. Listen, that's fine. He's waived his rights to anonymity. That's I think that's his decision. So I'm happy to go with that, and I'm not getting yeah. So I think we'll all agree that that's fine. Thank you for your patience there. Please continue.
All right, so if I do tread close, shout. His bid is listed as being a final offer. Clearly that's not the case, as I know through discussions with him that he has revised the bid and that's been submitted. So the summary information that we are being asked to work on is not exactly accurate, and it reveals significant variations in the way that officers have dealt with the bidders. Some of the 8 other, there were 10 bids in total, were rejected, it would appear, on matters of opinion, and that, is understandable. And I thank Councillor Cope for clarifying that best consideration is what we should be talking about, not absolute value. Everyone knows that there are plans approved for the redevelopment of Deepcut Barracks, and it's now remained Mindenhurst. 1,200 homes are being built, some already completed, and there are another 800 still to come, and they're being worked on as we speak. Parking for the old Deepcut village pre-Mindenhurst was okay, it worked. Sometimes a bit crowded, but the car park in Wood End Road was well used. I suggest that it is only the forthcoming opening of St Barbara's car park. The sign says in September 2025 on the door, but that's a builder's estimate, and we know what that means. But that's what makes the closure of this car park feasible. Much is made in paragraph 2.8 about improvements on Deepcut Bridge Road with regards to parking. It does look better now, but there are now bays along the road where 13 cars can be parked. A visit to the Street View function of Google Earth will show you that previously there were 18 cars that could park on the garage side of the road. You can go on there and count them. So that's a loss of 5 spaces, not a gain in parking on Deepcut Bridge Road. And the church car park itself had 91 spaces. I know this, I've counted them. But under the planning conditions, the new car park, it will be 61. Hopefully that can be increased, but at the moment it's 61. Wood End Road car park, as we know, has 48 spaces. So instead of the claimed increase, the increase overall is quite small. If you take 48 plus 18 as was, that's 66 spaces. Compare that with a new proposal of 61 plus 13, that's 74. So you're getting an 8 car park space increase in a village where there are going to be another 800 new homes. That ratio doesn't even meet Surrey County Council standards. If we want to build a better future for Deepcut, and Bindendhurst is part of that, we cannot build in parking blight from the outset. Wood End Road needs to stay as a car park, and there is one bid that will achieve that and generate funds for the council. It's the only bid that meets the council's own conditions of a 2-year period of maintaining the car park. Best value is best consideration, including environmental things, and I would urge you to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you press your button, Councillor Benton? Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, I don't think anybody used the phrase max value. We use the phrase best value, and we understand what value means, and the monitoring officer has given a definition of that. So I don't want anybody to overplay the financial consideration in the decision-making process, because best value is what we are legally obliged to do. Councillor Finan-Cook, is there any of Councillor Betton's points you'd like to refer to? There were a few.
You made a lot of points, Councillor Betton. Was there anything in particular that you felt that you would like a response from in the chamber this evening from myself? All of it?
Sorry, I just think that the best thing for Deepcut is to have it remain as a car park, and there is a bid that will make that happen.
Okay, well, with regards to this bid, as I said earlier on, we did go through all the bids and we did consider them very carefully as a team. With regards to that bid, I can't discuss that openly because those are in exempt, and I don't wish to put this meeting into exempt. But needless to say that the professional opinions of our very learned officer team was that the bid we are minded to accept this evening was the best value for the 90,000 people that live in Surrey Heath.
When you say we, you mean the recommendation before us from the officers?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Betton, I think there are a few numbers flowing around, and I think Councillor Finan-Cook did state the numbers earlier, but I just want everybody to be crystal clear. There are 48 spaces in current Wood End car park. Mr Stevens, as I, are still at a loss as to why our own website said 40 and we marketed 40, although we did physically put a space down. You're right to say there were 91 in the previous St Barbara's car park, but that was primarily for the use of the garrison. As everybody would be aware, it wasn't adopted by the Diocese of Guildford, I think it is. I'm not so clued up on Church of England stuff. And the new spaces in that car park at the moment are planned to be 60. So, like I say, there have been a few numbers flying around. Those are the definitive numbers, if we could try and stick to those. You're right, there was the regularisation of the car parking on Deepcut Bridge Road, which I think is in the interest of everybody. And seeing as Mr Knight has waived his right to anonymity, it's probably worth noting there is quite a large bay in front of his establishment as well, which I don't think was referenced in your commentary. Was there anything else we needed to pick up there?
I think it was.
No?
Best
Was there,
value and
was there anything
the
Mr Breeden needed to pick up in that?
We could ask Mr Breeden if he'd like to begin.
Yeah, I think it might be worth Mr Breeden taking us through the process that was followed in terms of the bidding process, selection of preferred bidder, etc. Albeit we'll talk about process, not any other names, if that's okay, Mr Breeden. So could you just walk us through what that looked like for this item, in fact, because I think it's fairly similar to the previous one, but just walk people through that, please.
There were conditional bids, conditional on planning and unconditional bids, which are all in the appendix. I think it's quite usual. You have conditional bids. Sometimes you'll offer something subject to bids conditional upon planning when you think you've got a strong prospect of getting a planning consent on that site, and that can generate higher values. You've then got to reflect on the confidence that you've got that that condition will be satisfied by the buyer and that they will actually get that planning consent to release additional value. And also you've got to take into account the time value of money and the pressure on the council's finances and the desire to get funding in quickly. So those are some of the factors. And the project was initially marketed, as you've identified, saying that it would be a 2-year period from when the marketing would launch, that it would remain as a car park. At that point, I didn't have good visibility about when the St Barbara car park would open. So I thought just put in a good pad period. And then as discussions evolved, I think it is fair to say that we've tried to leverage that point to maximise the capital receipt in terms of how long the overlap period would be. I think that covers all the points that you raised and as much insight as I can give on that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure if Councillor Betton has other ones, he'll come back to us. Thank you, Mr Breeden. So I think we'll go to Councillor McIntyre next, if that's okay.
Chair, can I be really irritating? So I've got 2 questions again. Yes, I'll take that as a yes. One's related for Mr Breeden. And talking about unconditional offers, could you just talk to us a little bit about when we should be minded to accept unconditional offers, and if it's unusual for us to accept, unconditional offers without planning permission and conditional offers with planning permission, obviously, as you said, bring 2 different values, or could potentially bring 2 quite different values. So would it be unusual to accept unconditional offers that don't have planning permission in real estate transactions, whether we're talking about public sector or private sector?
Well, most real estate transactions aren't conditional on planning. Where there's a significant difference between selling something with the benefit of a condition or without, then it can be the case that it's a good idea to sell something conditional upon the buyer submitting a planning application and then being obliged to buy once they've secured that consent. And that can be a way of maximise the land receipt. For those with the appendix of the bids, you can see there the spread of bids that came in that were conditional and unconditional, and then it's up to us as seller to weigh up that likelihood of that conditional sale being, or that condition being satisfied. And also, so there's a risk there that it never gets satisfied and then you go back to square one. And there's also the time value. So there's you have to wait to receive your sale proceeds. Thank you.
And are there any rules impacting that? Are there any specific criteria when we should and shouldn't accept unconditional offers? I don't know who's best to answer.
I think it's one of those best consideration, best value, value judgments.
Mrs. Boateng agrees with that.
Yes, I confirm that there's no legal rules related to local authority as to whether or not you're able to accept a conditional or unconditional offer. It just comes down to best consideration, best value considerations.
So that wasn't my two questions, that was 1A and 1B, sorry.
As I said earlier, it includes the executive really test my patience. Go on, Councillor McIntyre, so, please.
I've got to ask a question about finances, sorry. Mr. Bradford, would you be able to just remind us about our total savings and capital receipt targets so that we avoid our section 114 that Councillor Betton referred to earlier?
A lot of this has been well publicised in public reports as well. So included in the MTFS, in the medium-term financial strategy that was approved by Council in February, we included 1.743 million of savings for the revenue account. And that included reduced interest payments as a result of the capital receipts. It was also referenced in the P&F Performance Finance Committee report on the 5th of March. That actually, if you go back and check, that actually had a figure of 1.659 million, but we also had £84,000 worth of savings that had previously been approved at committee. Also in that committee report, there was identified a further 500,000, which was to be found from service delivery reviews. This work is ongoing and will be reported to a further P&F committee, which will update councillors on the progress of those.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Radford, and thank you, Councillor McIntyre. So thank you for your patience, Councillor Cope. You lost a couple of slots there in the queue, but please, over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to follow Councillor McIntyre's lead because I just have one procedural point I want to raise before I get into what I wanted to say, and that is, sure the Executive are aware that a petition has been approved by the Council relating to the sale of assets, and now the petitioners were advised that the Executive would be, quote, advised that the petition on this matter presented to the Council will be presented to the Council in July, and at this point they will decide whether or not to defer the decision on this item. I don't think that deferral decision has been made yet, so perhaps I could get some clarity on that because that's what the petitioners have been told. Could you deal with that first?
I don't think that's correct, what you quoted there, because I don't know why we would make it. What exactly you said didn't quite make sense to me, what I heard, but Ms Willis is just going to confirm. Yeah. So my learned colleague has been elbowing me a couple of times to mention the petition, so thank you, Councillor Cope, for doing that. It's not in the script and it's not in the agenda, as you appreciate, right? And it's not a constitutional requirement for me to note it, but it's good that you raised it, so thank you. So my mea culpa on that in terms of the running order and everything else, it's just not quite on the radar. So you're correct in that a petition was received by the council. You're correct in so much as the relevant officers have concluded that it fits the requirement of a petition that we should hear, and it is also meets the threshold, which you might remember this administration halved in order to ensure that things came forward. I'm fairly sure did we not do one for the trees for yourself? Yeah, I think we did, didn't we? Yeah. Yeah, I know, but we did. I know, but things. Yeah, when you're well, yeah. when you start finding out you're losing 8 million a year to property deals that you had nothing to do with, and you lost 12 million out of your reserves at the blink of an eye because you didn't get a set of accounts for the previous 3 or 4 years, and none that were audited, then surprisingly priorities have to change. So yeah, but we covered that territory on a previous day. So you're right in so much as there is a petition. It will need to go to council. And the next council is in July. As I explained at the beginning of the meeting, and it is consistent with the Constitution, though we could argue it's a bit of a quirk. And again, if Councillor Garrett or anybody else wants to think about how we deal with that, we can obviously talk about it in the relevant committee at governance. But the executive committee here is the decision maker for this item. There is no requirement for us to refer it. And one could observe that given the amount of misinformation campaigning that was ongoing within certain parts of the community, there would have been an awareness of how the processes work should that needed to be considered prior to this meeting. The dates of the council meetings are clear and everything else is clear, but unfortunately the Surrey Heath Conservative Misinformation Department wanted to deal with it in a certain way. So we will hear it in July, and it is not relevant for this decision this evening. Don't. You did say that. That's true. Please carry on.
Thank you. And just want to pick up, obviously, the leaders just described this as the decision-making body, and that's correct. And therefore, I think it's really important to break down the arguments here. And I think there are basically two areas to look at. There's the sort of use and value of the car park to Deepcut, and there's the council's potential financial benefit of sale. I'm not going to say too much on the use and capacity because Councillor Betton basically said everything that I wanted to say. The one thing that I just wanted to pick up on is that my understanding is that St Barbara's, which is being sort of put forward as a potential alternative and a potential way to manage parking capacity, my understanding is that there's a lot of use for that in terms of school pick-up and drop-offs to the local nursery, and that there had been a previous assumption that that would be mainly used for that. Now, whenever I've been to Deepcut car park, it's been very busy, so if school pick-up and drop-off is being used at St Barbara's, that's just going to push parking out onto the road. So I just would like to know a little bit as to whether that has been considered. I also understand that some of the parking spaces on the main road, particularly on Mindenhurst Road, are temporary and won't be there for the long term. But as I say, Councillor Betton covered the capacity issue very well. I want to talk a little bit about the finances. Now, there's been a lot of claims that we need to sell this in order to support services. We need to sell this or we can't spend money here, can't spend money there. Well, look, if that were the case, then you'd be selling a much more valuable asset. The value of this land is a drop in the ocean in the council's finances. If anyone seriously thinks that selling this land is going to make a significant impact to the council's financial position, then they are engaging in voodoo economics. But this piece of infrastructure is vital to residents in and around Deepcut. I've met with many of them in recent weeks, and the community value and efficiency far exceeds the financial benefit of this sale. We've heard from the monitoring officer that you need to consider these in your decision-making process. So you cannot hide behind a legal process. You cannot hide behind officer recommendations on this decision. It is a choice to be made by the executive of this council. And now I just want to, and I don't usually quote fiction in the chamber, but I do just want to refer to the Liberal Democrat Manifesto of 2023, which you were all elected on. It talks about a genuine open dialogue with residents. It talks about listening to residents. It talks about accountability. It talks about enabling residents to call in decisions. I'm not sure how that works, but it's still a commitment on the Surrey Heath Liberal Democrat website. Well, the residents are speaking, and you are not listening. The leader referred to the fact that the petition has come in and that you guys had halved the number of required signatures. Well, they've cleared the old requirement anyway, because so many people feel so passionately about this issue. The residents are speaking, you are not listening. So I challenge the executive to stand by the commitments that you were all elected on and show a concession to the residents of Deepcut to accommodate their concerns, rather than just railroad this through despite overwhelming public opposition. As was referenced by the public questioner earlier, there is a middle road here. There is a compromise to be made, and I really encourage you to take it. Sadly, based on what I've heard so far, I'm not holding my breath, but I really hope that this one time you will prove me wrong.
Councillor Phelan-Cook, thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Cope. We are standing by our manifesto pledges that we would make council property work, and any properties that weren't working for us financially and for the residents of Surrey Heath financially would look to be sold, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight, fulfilling a manifesto promise. With regards to the value mentioned in the appendix, with regards to it being a drop in the ocean, you save money a pound at a time, you save money a penny at a time, and when we amass all of these little bits of land that we think that we possibly could be classified as surplus to requirements, it adds up to a lot of money, and we need to start somewhere, because the financial mismanagement in this council over the last 48 years has been absolutely disgusting, and it's left us in this dire situation. So we are starting a pound at a time, but we are starting at the bottom and we're working our way up, and we are going to keep this council chamber open, keep the lights on in this office. That is exactly what we are doing. We're not playing, and our manifesto said we weren't going to play. Our manifesto said we were going to actually do what we promised, and that is exactly what we're doing. With regards to numbers of spaces, I believe those questions have been answered in the paperwork by officers and by myself this evening. But yeah, I find it quite shocking that you're upset that we're standing by our manifesto promises.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd just like to add to what was said there. Listen, I don't remember the exact numbers, but something like 48.6% of the people that voted in the May elections, that's, please, if I'm out by 1 or 2%, give me some leeway there, that voted in the May elections in 2023, voted for that manifesto. They did so based on decades of mismanagement, which led to £113 million of their money being invested in retail assets that have virtually no value today by the Conservative administration, in the same way as was done in Woking rashly across and in other places across the board. That has left this council with a huge financial scar. Not only that, and we've had discussions in this chamber, Councillor Cope, I think you queried my maths. I don't want to say I told you so, but I told you so, that the numbers were not correct and this council was going into a tailspin. And that is what has been uncovered. I think it's fair to say that not all the officers believed that things were as they were, but if something isn't as good as it seems, it probably isn't as good as it seems. We lost 12 million in reserves when the accounts were updated. We went from a 3 million gap to an 8 million annual gap. And this council will go into section, I always forget the numbers, 114. And the commissioners will be in the blink of an eye. And that car park, play parks, discretionary services, the supports we give to local communities will go in the blink of an eye. So yes, these are tough decisions, but these are the tough decisions that we were elected to make in order to protect the most vulnerable in our society. Yes, we cannot spend the same money multiple times, but as a function of considering this change today, we maybe can renovate something like 2 to 4 play parks, which our young people enjoy for the next 15 years, which is the typical lifespan. And just think about how many young people, how many young residents will benefit from that. The consideration we're talking about could potentially fund for a number of years our commitment, a significant contribution to our commitment to Citizens Advice Bureau, which I know is close to your own heart. It can also support potentially the provision of meals in people's homes, the most vulnerable people. And we talked earlier in terms of the poverty of the young people, and thank you, Councillor Rowlands, for bringing that to the table. But there is also the poverty and deprivation of the older people in our community. So we make no apology for having to take on these tough decisions that we inherited from the Conservative administration, mismanagement. We don't want to do it, we don't like doing it, but we have to look at the needs of the many here And there are many people that will benefit from considering these types of opportunities across the borough. For my own personal perspective, yes, we made commitments on the finance, and I think probably people here think I'm a bit of a numbers geek. I make not that much apology for that either. But by taking these actions and looking to build homes for our key workers, we can ensure that the vulnerable people we talked about in Councillor Rowland's areas and Councillor Garrett's areas, and in fact the Fine and Cook's areas, get the houses that they deserve, and they continue to get the support they need by doing a range of these types of decisions. So we can address that issue. We can also help mitigate the vandalism that is coming from on high towards us in terms of the housing target. Because every time we develop a piece of potentially develop a piece of brownfield land, we are saving green space that we all love and cherish. So these are not easy decisions. These are not being railroaded through. This project has been reviewing the whole portfolio and making the portfolio work has been a dedicated piece of work by the officers under Mr. Breeden and under Kel Finance-Cook leadership. But it has taken that long to get to the stage where we understand what we have, how it can work best for us, and what the potential way forwards are for those pieces of land and property. I've said enough for now. Councillor Whitcroft, I think you're next up on the rank.
Thank you for that, Leader. I speak, as most people will know, as a member for Mitchett and Deepcut, and like you, I'm not happy with this decision. Right from the outset, I might as well make it clear that I would prefer for this matter to be deferred tonight, because I think over the course of the last week or so, there have been a number of changes which could well have an impact on the residents of Deepcut, and I think it would be a good idea if we considered those changes in the cold light of day rather than deciding this matter tonight. I just want to remind people that Deepcut residents have, one hesitates to use the word suffered, but they have been put, let's say, at a considerable disadvantage over the course of the last few years, insofar as they have shouldered the vast majority of the new houses being built in Surrey Heath. The Mindenhurst development deals with 1,200 homes, 700 plus of which are still to come. The inconvenience associated with the development should not be underestimated. Deepcut residents had to put up with their main road being closed, or at least being made one way, for very nearly a year, with all the impact that that had on the residents and the businesses in Deepcut. There's been a constant stream over the course of the last few years of construction vehicles trundling around the place, and even more are yet to come. So I think most people would agree that it's a bit unfortunate that, having shown very considerable stoicism through these events over the course of the last few years, that the first one of these, or I think in total accuracy, it's probably the second one, of these asset disposals impacts the village of Deepcut. It's also true that this matter has been surrounded in a great deal of controversy, and a standard of communications which I think it's true to say have left something to be desired. And I know from the conversations which I've had with people on the executive and others that that's a matter which has been considered and will be learnt from going forward. But nevertheless, the impact that that's had on the people of Deepcut has been considerable, and that's one of the reasons why, as I say, I would prefer this matter to be deferred. The situation is still fluid. Just last week, we had an important email come in from a major player within the Mindenhurst development, which threw some curveballs, if you like, not very serious ones, I don't think. I don't think there's anything that can't be managed, but nevertheless, that does need to be considered and thought about. It also has to be said, of course, that, and this has been touched on, that Deepcut residents have not been helped by a large degree of misinformation, not to mention scaremongering, which has taken place mainly outside this chamber in an attempt to politicise the issue. We've had rumours, totally unfounded, about the future of the recreation ground in Deepcut. We've had suggestions that the Mitchett Community Centre playing fields are going to be disposed of, which is complete nonsense, with no truth to it whatsoever. And of course, we've had the famous story about the allotments in Frimley, which were about to be disposed of very imminently, when in fact no such plan has ever been thought of and considered. So that's a matter of regret. And a lot of people in Deepcut have been misled by this information or misinformation, which has been led by, as I say, political groups who see this as an opportunity to develop some advantage for themselves. I could go on about this a bit further, but I'm not going to. So this is all extremely regrettable from the point of view of Deepcut. There is no question of that at all. And I think everybody in this room would prefer not to be talking about this matter tonight. But having had a number of informal meetings with executive members, I'm forced to accept that the financial position of this council, created by previous administrations, and I have to say, I don't know what my colleagues think about it, but I find it very difficult to hear people talking about voodoo economics in this council chamber against a background of previous administrations of their political colour, which were made going back to 2016, and which you've already referred to, Leader. It's very, very difficult to take lessons from the political party to my left on such matters. The responsibility which their predecessors, and I fully accept they didn't have anything to do with it in that sense, but it was their administrations which put this council in the situation in which it is. And I'm not going to go on any more about that because you've also covered that very well. So I have a great deal of sympathy with the executive because it's in a very, very difficult position when it comes to deciding this matter. And it may only be not a huge amount of money, as we've heard, and I can't say what the amount of money is. Let's just say I wish I had it in my bank account. Let's just say, as you already have, some of the things that could be done with it. So I understand the executive's position. It's a difficult situation, and I wish you well in making it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitcroft. I understand that it is an emotive issue for yourself and your ward colleagues and the residents who live and work and indeed play in Deepcut. We would prefer to not have to make decisions like this. We would prefer to not be in a position where we are needing to achieve capital receipts to keep the lights on at Surrey Heath House for the next 2 years, but that's the situation we are in. We don't want to have to consider the sale of lands, but we absolutely must. That said, I don't accept that we need to be deferring this decision, because I think we all understand, including yourself, that we need to do something pretty sharpish to actually achieve these capital receipts, and deferring decisions like this is not going to help anybody.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Councillor Whitcroft, as well. Councillor Garrett, please.
Thank you, Leader. Actually, I'll start by thanking the officers for pulling this information together, because obviously they're pulling all the information together and doing all the work, and now we're discussing it, and they've done a lot of work to get to this stage, so I do want to thank them for that. There has been the term misinformation mentioned in this chamber a few times this evening. The video that was put out by the council was probably a little bit misinformation as well, I think, because the video that I saw didn't show the car park with any cars in it, which, from what I understand, when it was filmed, there were plenty of cars in the car park, but it wasn't taken from that angle. And the comments that followed that post from the council on Facebook, from 132 people that were not Conservatives, all said comments along the lines of, I've never seen it that empty, and someone who's used it a number of occasions, I've never seen it that empty. So I do wonder if this misinformation does work both ways. It is a very popular car park, and I think the problem we're going to have is, if it is sold, it is going to be an issue that Deepcut are going to have to suffer with for a while. St Barbara's, we know, is not going to open immediately, and looking at the conditions, it's not going to be used for anything straight away, which is brilliant. The Mindenhost Road parking spaces, you have been mentioned, are only temporary, and they will be removed, from what I understand. So they won't be ones that we can count in the possible parking spaces that are available. And I'm not going to mention the figures that are in this paper, but obviously someone in the team has done some working on stats on possible daily events of parking within that car park. And if you extrapolate those figures, it will probably be one of them, probably about the 4th or 5th most popular car park in the whole of Surrey Heath. And I only know that because I have the P&D car park figures we had for the recent P&F meeting. So it's actually quite a popular car park. There are other car parks that are used less that possibly could have been considered. This is all information that is in the public domain, and I'm happy to supply this. I'd say I've done an extrapolation. I'm not going to mention the figures here, but I'm happy to have it if we go to part 2. So I think the best value comment is a key one here. The residents of Deepcut use this car park, and they want this car park, and the best value for them is actually probably to take the second highest non-conditional offer. Now, again, we can't mention figures, and it's not. There is a gap between that and the conditional offer, but what that will do is we'll still put money into the capital receipts of quite a large figure, if based on what the number one figure is, but it'll also keep the residents of Deepcut happier, because they aren't going to have to suddenly have an issue with their parking. I have got some other issues I'd noted here, but Councillor Betton has certainly mentioned them, and so has Councillor Cope, and I'm conscious of time, so I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. That video was filmed at 4 p.m. last Wednesday, to tell you. And the video doesn't lie. The video shows the cars that were parked there. No, from ward members and from people who have obviously been keeping a very close eye on this car park, we have never seen it more than 2/3 full, so I'm not sure that says it's always full. I'm interested to see these P&D figures, because that's not a pay and display car park, so those numbers aren't recorded. So, well, maybe I can talk to Councillor Ashbury about that, but parking events aren't individually recorded in that car park. With regards to misinformation, there has been a lot of misinformation, and some of it's actually been really quite troubling and very worrying, and there's been some very, very aggressive comments left, not only under the Surrey Heath post, but under posts of some of your colleagues, which are actually quite frightening. And I'd really love to know how you know that they're not all Conservatives or party members or supporters of yours. But I think the thing I really need to address here is, and I can't discuss it too concisely because otherwise we'd need to go into Part D and we'd have to lose our guests from the chamber. But the terms of selling this piece of land to the second highest bidder wouldn't necessarily mean that it would still be a busy car park. And with the opening of St Barbara's, I can almost assure you that St Barbara's would be the busier car park. So all of these things have been thought out. We haven't sat there and just looked at the money and just looked at, what works best for people in this chamber making these kinds of decisions. We have thought about what works for Deepcut, and we have looked at the numbers, and we do believe that there will be enough parking provision for residents, for visitors, once the St Barbara's car park is open.
Okay, I've got 3, and I think we're going to go for a wrap on this, unless I see any more hands put up. Yeah, so I've got 3. So, Councillor Lisa Finan-Cook, please.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to make one point, and then I will ask my question, I promise, and I'll be very, very brief. I just wanted to thank you for outlining the importance of some of our discretionary services to the most vulnerable in our community. And that comment was triggered by Councillor Cope's comments, and he will be well aware, with his interest and involvement in citizens' advice, just how far that money could go to help people who really need it. And I am not saying that the car park in Deepcut isn't important to the residents there, but we have to take a really broad view for this borough and make sure that we are meeting the needs of the most vulnerable. So thank you for outlining that. My question is, I think, for Mr. Chinna, and I want to circle back to the conversation around car parking and concerns around congestion. So, Mr. Chinna, in your professional opinion, and I have to be careful with my words here, notwithstanding due planning processes, if this site was sold for development, and assuming that would be for a modest number of dwellings, what do you feel would be the likely on-site parking provision required under current rules at that type of location?
Thank you, Councillor Finan-Cook, for your question. So, for example, if this site came forward for residential and the council, not the council, or the preferred bidder wanted to bring forward family housing, for example. When I say family housing, you're looking 2-3 bed units on the sites. They would have to adhere to the parking standards set by Surrey County Council. And typically the standards which are set is about 2 spaces per unit, which would be proposed as part of any development which would come forward on the site if it came forward for housing, for example. Thank you.
Councillor Rice, I think you've been quite patient.
Thank you, Leader, and I will just ask you to bear with me. It's a pretty long set of comments I have. I do want to begin by paying thanks to Councillor Finan-Cook for the work she's done on this. It has not been easy, and the task she's taken on has been one where she's been required to recommend very difficult decisions because of the financial situation this council is in. She has carried out her duties with care, and I thank her for that. We made a promise to the voters of Surrey Heath in 2023 that we would get the finances of this council in order. The previous Conservative administration made property purchases which left us with debts to address now. It has been incredibly difficult and continues to be incredibly difficult, and all of us on the executive have been required to make difficult recommendations when it comes to the services that this council delivers. If we do not continue to make those difficult decisions that we were elected to make, then this would place the council into further financial difficulties and could spell the end of the ability for the elected members of this council to have control over the decisions that this council makes. With this, and as alluded to just now by Councillor Finan-Cook, the abuse that Councillor Finan-Cook has received, and others as well, has been unacceptable. And those who have made those comments and those who have led a political campaign to sow division in our community should be ashamed of themselves. To abuse an elected representative undertaking her responsibilities makes a mockery of the democratic process and will only result in frightening off others who may put themselves forward for election. I wonder if those leading the political campaign on this, who I know have won elections and stood for election themselves, would like the type of abuse that has been received by sitting councillors. I don't think they would, and I would advise them to reflect on what they have done. Our politics must be done more calmly, with an appreciation that those who put themselves forward should never be attacked like this. We must be able to disagree with respect of each other. I also challenge the political activists to suggest an alternative action as to how we can tackle the financial problems this council faces. Up until now, there has been no alternative vision put forward. Wishing and hoping for local government reorganisation to happen or a reprieve from central government is simply only sticking your head in the sand, which is not a plan. The crisis this council faces is a reality that we must deal with now. It isn't nice to do, it isn't pleasant, it isn't why we stood for election, but it is the reality we face. If we do not find solutions and opportunities, then we face a Section 114 notice, with government commissioners being sent into this council where everything would be up for grabs, and we would not be able to protect funding for external organisations and our services. Our green spaces could be threatened, our cherished cultural provision and other services even further diminished. That is the future we face if we don't act. I'm not willing to stick my head in the sand, and I'm not willing to say to the residents of this borough that we weren't willing to act because we weren't willing to take a difficult decision. As both a ward member for Mitchett and Deepcut and a member of the executive, I come to this evening's meeting conflicted. As a ward member, as a resident of Deepcut, as someone who uses that car park probably more than most people in this chamber, I think more than, except Mr. Knight, I suspect he's parked there much longer than I have, I do accept that the loss of this car park will have an impact on my community. I believe that there will be displaced parking onto Wood End Road, which is one of the few roads in Deepcut that does not have double yellow lines, and that Wood End Road, Maidstone Close and Blackdown Road already do have a significant amount of on-street parking. Last Sunday, I met with some residents from Wood End Road and other parts of Deepcut, where they grilled me for over an hour on what was happening, as well as attending the annual meeting of the Frimley Green Mitchett and Deepcut Resident Society last week, where a number of concerns were put to me as well as to other members. That's part of my role as the ward member, and I was happy to do it. As a member of the executive, on the other hand, I am acutely aware of the pressure that this council faces. The debt liability we currently hold is immense and is quickly draining our reserves and eating into the general revenue of the council. At the budget earlier this year, the reality was set out for all to see and clearly explained. The financial burden of the interest payments we must make on the debt held by this council equates to around 50% of the income this council makes. That is just unsustainable for a council of this size. And if we do not find ways of generating income, then we will quickly find ourselves on the unpleasant side of a Section 114 notice. And we will see things like we've seen in Woking, with massive increases in council tax, the drastic and very painful spending cuts to all services that we've been able to protect over the last 2 years, such as Meals at Home, funding for Citizens Advice, which are services that help and support the most vulnerable in Surrey Heath. I've been a councillor for 6 years now, and protecting the most vulnerable in our society has always been at the highest priority for me, and so many for myself and so many other councillors that have sat in this chamber. It is those people that we must look to when making decisions on spending. I could go on about the impact those services have on people, like the social contact through the Meals at Home service, the expert advice delivered by Citizens Advice. Those people are always at the forefront of my mind. This process hasn't been easy, and there are issues that I do have with it. As mentioned already this evening, when the site was initially marketed, there was a statement on the advert that it would be required to be kept as a car park for 2 years. While residents in Deepcut were not pleased with the potential disposal of this car park, the ability to have a transition period of 2 years was something that they said to me that would have enabled the new car park in St Barbara's to come into use and settled, any issues ironed out, and then move on with a later closure. The impact of the new car park being also the car park for the church, school drop-off area, and a public car park is something that I believe we need to get ahead of as to how it will all work in the future. The fact this 2-year period was not maintained to this recommendation is incredibly disappointing. And if it were possible to provide that 2-year period now, it would have my support, absolutely. Residents that have spoken with me have said at times it has felt like a deception. And I hope that this mistake never happens again. and I have been reassured by the portfolio holder and others that this lesson has been learned. Residents have also raised concerns about the impact of the closure of the car park would have on local businesses. They are numerous in Deepcut, such as the gym, the Deepcut Lodge, which is a 10-bed hotel with only 2 parking spaces, the care home, and others whose customers and visitors use Wood End Road. While some businesses in Deepcut may be in a more central location and the distance from St Barbara's is not that different, some of the businesses located closer to the top of the village and those displaced cars are unlikely to use St Barbara's and will most likely use on-street parking provision. I also add that from those residences that those users should not be given free parking at Wood End Road if that was a possibility, and charges for business use is not unacceptable to residents in the area. Residents also from North Minden House, which is further towards the top of the village, have raised concerns with me about their outdoor amenity space already being used by visitors to Deepcut, to business along Deepcut Road for parking. This is a private residence with limited spaces, and they should be able to enjoy the space they live in without cars being parked in their garden areas. What I'm saying with these points is that the closure of Wood End Road car park will have an impact on the residents of the immediate area. It will be vital, therefore, if this recommendation is accepted tonight, that Surrey Heath Borough Council take action to promote the new car park at St Barbara's and work at pace to ensure that there is proper signage directing cars into Deepcut so they are fully aware of the new car park provision, and that we work with residents of Wood End Road, Maidstone Close, Blackdown Road, North Minden House and others, including ward members, to ensure that their amenity is not completely negatively affected. It's also understood by residents that Wood End Road's car park purchase could lead to more housing in Deepcut. As we all know, the Mindenhurst development is delivering a large housing development and equates to a significant proportion of the local plan allocation of housing in Surrey Heath. Residents have spoken with me that Deepcut often feels like the place where housing can be dumped. While I believe that the Mindenhurst development will be a positive contribution to the village I live in, many residents by the central government that Deepcut will be the place where more housing is placed in the future, and that the required infrastructure is not being delivered alongside it, namely access to GP surgeries and other healthcare services. From my meeting, there were positive requests that came out of it for Surrey Heath to champion in the remaining years that we have left here, if this recommendation is accepted. That they asked to make Wood End Road and Blackdown Road residents-only parking, to have clear signage to the church car park, to leave the school parking and one-way system down Mindenhurst Road in place, and to increase on-street parking along Deepcut Bridge Road. Now, I accept that 3 of those 4 are all responsibilities of the County Council, and I hope that I can count on the executive support calls to provide these types of mitigation for the closure of the car park and respond positively to the request of the residents in Deepcut. I have also received calls for a potential delay or deferral of closing this car park to a point where the fuller picture of the complete Mindenhurst development is clearer, especially to fully understand its implication, the loss of the school parking spaces along Mindenhurst Road and the new retail units that are to open. While I do have sympathy with this idea, something that could have been addressed by the 2-year period, a deferral of this recommendation today to satisfy those requests could result in a delay of many years, and the financial outlook of the Council requires immediate action. Leader, I find this decision very difficult, but I was elected to make difficult decisions. I was not elected to dodge them. When those in public office hide from difficult decisions, it weakens the entire democratic process. It would be the easy option for me to oppose this item tonight. It would be the politically convenient thing for me to do. My political life would be much easier if I opposed this and convinced you all not to accept this recommendation. But how would I be able to look those in the eye who rely on our council services? The older person not getting a hot meal through our community support programme. The person in debt not being able to access citizens' advice because we had to end their funding. Or everyone in this borough if this council had to declare itself bankrupt. I must weigh up the balance of the proposals, and I suspect my vote tonight will upset many, but I must do what I think is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. I think Councillor Cook, you going to pick up a couple of things?
Thank you, Councillor Rice. There's a lot to unpick there, and we'll be here till the next executive if I address every point. But I wanted to thank you for your comments and for your support. And just to say, I do truly understand that it is a difficult position for yourself to be in, both as a ward member and an executive member. Also, that it's a tricky situation for councillors Betton and Whitcroft, and it's not ideal. We genuinely wish we didn't have to consider this, but unfortunately, as you say, we do need to take tough decisions. We will, of course, undertake to make sure that St Barbara's car park is effectively marketed, is effectively promoted, and people know where to find it. And we will work with ward councillors and residents wherever we can to make sure that that's efficient and effective and works for everybody. Yeah, I don't really know what more I can pick up there. I think so much of what you've raised has been commented on already, has been clarified by officers or myself or the leader where possible. But once again, I'd like to thank you for your support.
Thank you. For this next point, which I would like to make, I need to get the executive to agree that we're happy for selected details of the minutes of the recent property and economic development working groups to be shared at a fairly high level, given the current public interest and ongoing politically motivated misinformation campaign. Are we so agreed to do?
Agreed.
Thank you. My recollection from the minutes of the Property and Economic Development Working Group, which for the benefit of the public at home listening to us and in the chamber here, is a cross-party group, so representatives from the Conservatives, the Labour group and the community groups are invited and involved. From those minutes of the 8th of November 2024, 13th of the 12th 2024 and the 31st of the 1st 24, where these items were discussed and progressed in line with the normal process for decision making, that no issues were raised of concern by members of other groups on behalf of their residents, and suggestions of mitigations asked for from the executive and from the from the portfolio holder and the officers. Can I ask those who were at those meetings, which I think is Councillor Ashbury and somebody else, yourself,
Me.
Councillor Phelan Cook, thank you. Is that also your recollection?
It is.
That is my recollection, yes.
Okay, and from an officer's perspective, do you feel that's also a fair representation of those meetings, Ms. Boateng, from your reading of the minutes and involvement?
Thank you, Leader. I had an idea that you were going to ask about those dates, and I've had a look at the minutes, and I wasn't able to find anything in the minutes which suggested that concerns had been raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so so that's worthy of note. No, I saw Councillor Garrett. I think I said we were three and we were on a wrap up on this.
Yeah, but you just spoke about something I mean, and you representation just given is not my representation.
Well, are you asking a question, or you want to make a point of clarification? Right, that's fine. If you'd like to make a point of clarification, please continue.
The first time that car park was ever mentioned in the minutes, so in that meeting, I made it very clear that if it came to being a sale, that there would be, I won't use the word that I used at the time, that wouldn't go down too well. So I highlighted then that it would be a problem. And I wasn't the only councillor there that also said that, but I won't mention any other names, okay? So my representation of that in my head is completely different to yours, okay? So it was obviously minuted that that's what I commented on.
Fine. So I refer to selected dates, and I've asked for the observations, and I've asked for an independent view of the minutes. So you're welcome to your opinion, Councillor Garrett. Yeah. Okay. So bear with me for a second as I try and do a wrap up on what was quite a long session and bring us to a conclusion. First of all, I want to thank, sorry. Oh, sorry, please.
Sorry, thank you, Leader. It's a clarification I'm going to ask for.
Right, okay, this might be the last clarification.
Okay, in that case, I'll be creative in how I phrase this. I have been alerted to some information which has been uploaded onto social media this evening. I haven't seen the post myself because obviously I'm in the chamber, but I just wanted to ask the Leader if he could potentially clarify his position with regard to the petition and where our position on hearing that petition, because there has been some information which I believe is incorrect, posted by somebody who spoke earlier. I also would ask that there could be some clarification with regard to the comments around the assets that we have looked at and considered for potential sale.
Thank you, Councillor. They were on my list, but you didn't know that, so thank you for that. So let's deal with those two first. So what I said was that the constitution of this council is such that when a petition is raised and it meets a certain threshold, it goes forward to the next relevant meeting. The next relevant meeting for the petition that has been duly served and validated by democratic services is the full council. The full council is not, the next full council is not to the end of July. Therefore, the petition will be heard in line with the constitution of this council at the end of July. It is not within my gift, certainly not in the short term. It is within the governance working group for us all to agree on to change it, but it is not within my gift to change that process. That process is documented in the constitution of this council and in line with good order, and I think it's actually the same person that keeps wanting to challenge us to follow good order and good process. We will follow good order and good process, which means that petition will be heard at the next appropriate council, which is the end of July. I'm saying the end of July, I think it's near the middle to the end of July in my defence. 18th, it rings a bell? Well, apparently we're moving to the 16th. Thank you. We are moving to the 16th because the Ashburys have a very important event to go to, family event to. So it will be heard in due course. It is not within my gift to change that, should I wish to, or this executive's gift to change that. So I'm sorry if people don't wish to read the detail of the constitution of council in submitting questions to this council or in how they interpret my comments with respect to the handling of petitions, but those are the rules of the game that we are playing to. The second point, Councillor, you mentioned was, remind me.
It was the some clarification around the assets.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. Just by opening your mouth, I got there. Thank you. So, Councillor Finan-Cook gave an outstanding summary of the situation with respect to our asset, which is land and property strategy, which has been highlighted by Councillor Cope, was in our manifesto in May 2023. And was then incorporated into our council strategy in November 2024. This highlighted that we would make property work for the residents and that we would address the finances of this council and that we would also create homes for people and try and balance all of those things, including protecting the environment. So those things are very much within our strategy. The councillor gave an update that for the vast majority of assets that this council owns, there will be no change. If anybody wishes to make us a lottery-style offer for the retail assets, they are more than welcome. That we'll give it due consideration. However, pending that kind of thing emerging, we're likely to keep that. There are selected industrial and commercial units that we will look at on their merits should offers arise. And there are selected community assets that make more sense to be owned by those groups that are primarily users of them. And I gave examples, or The councillor, gave examples of parish councils, maybe being more natural odours, scout groups. We have bowling clubs, we have residents' associations, and I think we found from Councillor Quinn and Councillor Rowland's observations today that small strips of land at the back of properties may also not be in our best interest to hold. So we will keep a very open mind on those things. But when you whittle through all of that lot, what you get to is a select number of sites that could be considered for sale, potentially for development, potentially for somebody else to get better use for a green space. I believe there was a proposal around a forest school, which obviously would really help the development of our young people for one of the sites. We will give all of those things due consideration should they come forward. And there are one or two other bigger sites that may be significantly underutilised, that again have some opportunities to benefit the community as a whole, again balancing all the things that we talked about earlier in terms of best value. Hopefully that clarifies the situation, Councillor Fine and Cook. So I just want to go back to what Councillor Rise said, and I really appreciate him raising it. The abuse that some of our councillors have suffered, and I think particularly Councillor Fine and Cook and her partner, has been beyond the pale. It is unacceptable, and I would hope that leaders in this chamber, and we have discussed it within group leader meetings, would use their influence to ensure that things are kept appropriate in terms of playing the ball, not playing the person, to use a football analogy. So thank you for raising that, Councillor Rise. There is a huge amount of effort that is put into trying to steady this ship, having had it hold under the waterline by the Conservative Party in the previous administration. So thank you, Cal, for that and all your efforts to date. It is also deeply regrettable that there are members of political parties who are very open to misinform our residents, leading to huge amounts of anxiety, where they know for a fact that there are particular locations that are protected under the local plan, that there are no plans to develop, and that our residents get a huge amount of benefit from. It is completely irresponsible. And again, I hope that those in positions of influence will use their influence for the good of our residents in making sure those matters are not repeated. It does tend to be repeat offenders who are Conservative Surrey County councillors. In no particular order, I think we recognise as an executive that there has been huge changes within Deepcut, and the residents of Deepcut have been extremely stoic through all of those. I remember myself having to cycle up the hill there many times when it was down to one lane, and it was ugly for all concerned, and not just looking at my derriere. So it has been a huge programme of change, and I really can start to see from my movement around the ward that the village is going to be transformed, and I think in a very special way for the future. But it hasn't been without pain, and I think that is recognised and acknowledged by this council. A number of members has also made comments that communications, I think it was one of the public questions as well, could have been better through this process. I think the councillor acknowledged that. We'll work with officers to try and make sure we improve that. We'll make sure that we try and bring relevant ward councillors along with us as these opportunities are brought forward to the executive for discussion. And obviously we've touched on the the Property and Economic Development Working Group as a place where those conversations can also be held in private. I just want to check in terms of the process that we have followed in coming to this decision point, which we are coming to shortly. The monitoring officer is happy that we are legal and appropriate in what we have discussed today and in the process to date. Is that correct?
Yes, Leader, I'm satisfied that the council's followed the legal process in marketing and then the decision that's before you now. Thank
you.
Thank you. So the resolution is appropriate as documented. Mr. Breeden, you're happy in terms of the commercial aspects that we have followed an appropriate and fair and just process as well?
Yes, everything's been fully considered, yeah.
Very good. Okay, and in terms of the financial side as documented within the paper, Ms. Radford, though you're happy with those as well?
Yes, I'm satisfied.
Thank you. Okay, so there has been also, I did say it was no particular order, there has been some discussion about potentially deferring this. I'm not minded personally to put that to the executive. I don't know if any of the other executive members feel that we should be deferring any decision today. No, I don't. I'm not picking up that vibe. Okay, so I'm not minded to recommend that, and it looks like my colleagues aren't either. There is sufficient scope within the wording of the resolution for officers and delegated officers in consultation with the portfolio holder to continue to work on the detail of any decision pending. So we have some flexibility there. I would like to thank those officers that have worked diligently on this for their support. It is a bit of a test case for us in terms of its complexity and everything else. I think we would admit there has been more than average hours put into this, would we not, Mr. Stevens? So, and again, thank you for Mr. Stevens for his counsel in particular, but obviously the Ms. Boateng in particular as well for hers. Okay, I think there was a point raised around consultation that was clarified earlier by the monitoring officer that for a decision such as this we don't need to consult, and she's just confirmed we followed a due and legal process to get to the decision point. In terms of the transfer, I think it's anticipated with the way that the resolution is written that should the decision be made, that there will be a period where both facilities would be open and therefore help with the transition through. I think he's acknowledged that a number of the other facilities are still to come online, be it the sports hub, be it the car park at the store. What I would say, Mr. Breeden, with regard to that is, should we go ahead and make a decision shortly, you've heard the discussion and you've heard the residents' feedback, and the longer that, and including Councillor Rice's speech and the other ward councillors, the longer that car park can be maintained for public use would be welcomed. That's what I heard, and I think you'd be wise to take note of that if we are able to influence should the decision be made. We covered the petition handling. Thank you for that. So I think we have covered everything. Does any of the executive wish to make a further comment on this item before we come to a conclusion? No. Okay, so we have the resolution before us as documented. Are we agreed with the resolution as it stands? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, if we could, and Mr. Breeden, if you could take note of that request to influence the process as much as possible to keep the transitionary facility available, that would be appreciated. Okay, so we're back to item 8 and we will move swiftly on. Is this in relation to Councillor 8? No. Is this a point of clarification? Please carry on. So I'll be even-handed with points of clarification.
The decision has been made. Can we try and ensure as many car parking spaces in the church car park as possible, given that there are 91 before and it's going to be 60? There must be room.
Thank you, Councillor Batten. Happy to take that on board. I have a feeling you're monitoring my laptop because that is one of my outstanding issues, is to give my pearls of wisdom to Mr. Chinner in terms of just revisiting our flexibility in that regard. We definitely, should the sale go ahead, we definitely have some options in the long term once we're owners. Whether we have any wriggle room in the short term, we'll take offline. But your point is well made. I think it is worth remembering that the 91 was not for the village; it was for the military camp, as we all know. And my brother's best mate or something was in there for quite a while, so I did get to know it a little bit on the fringes. So we'll take that offline, but thank you, Councillor Benton. Right, we're moving on to Councillor 8. Let's try again, shall we? Item 8. No rest for some people. The waste transfer station, unless you managed to offload this to Councillor Rice.
I have not managed to.
Waste transfer station and depot at 14 Doman Road, Camberley.
Thank you, Leader. This is the least controversial paper on the agenda this evening. We're asking the Executive to approve a lease on this site to Surrey County Council to continue to operate it as a waste transfer station and to approve a sum for enabling works to the site. By entering into this lease with County Surrey Heath Borough Council will make a significant saving due to the works that need to take place on the site to bring it up to standard. I'm happy to take any questions.
Good. So just a reminder, I think there's an exempt, is there an exempt section on this as well?
There will be, yeah.
Yeah, there will be. So we're still under the same rules. We still have one member of the public, happens to be my partner, but we can, we'll let her stay until, but if you need to go into exempt, we could be more flexible now. I prefer we didn't because it's been a good meeting that we've kept very open, but if we need to, we will. Do you want to add from the... Yes, let's go to Councillor Rise first, because you are waste supremo, aren't you?
I don't have a question, but I just want to add from the, as the portfolio holder responsible for the waste collection service in Surrey Heath, I am adding my complete support behind this as well. This will create a very attractive, if you can talk about attractive waste, site, a very useful strategic site for the future waste capabilities in Surrey Heath, which will, especially as we potentially now move into a new contract, as members will be aware, that's currently being negotiated for a new waste collection contractor. This will make it a very attractive option for Surrey Heath and the joint authority to negotiate as a bargaining chip of sorts. Yes, by combining the waste collection and potential disposal with regards to Surrey Heath and Surrey County, it makes a very attractive strategic site. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Rowlands.
Yes, it reads very well. The only question is, are we absolutely sure the Surrey County Council part of the proposal is foolproof? Because we've had experience in the past of them not coming up completely in line with what they suggested they could do.
Councillor Rowlands, we've got no reason to believe that when we enter into a contract on this lease that the terms of that contract wouldn't be fulfilled.
Was it? Yeah, please.
Leader, if I could just add on to that, I just kind of asked a quick question to Mr. Breeden. The Surrey County Council came to us to inquire about the site, so that would suggest that County Council is committed, to use those words.
No. Councillor Coke, please, crack on.
Thank you. I just want to clarify my understanding, and I'm going to try and be very careful and stay in the non-exempt, but do shout me down if I get that wrong. I'm sure you will not hesitate. As I understand it, this will put a £250,000 capital expense into our accounts at a time when we have just talked about how, there might be a Section 114, the commissioners might come in, but does putting this 250,000 into our accounts not take us closer to that, whereas there seems to be an alternative option of option A at 2.1, which doesn't, as I understand it, incur that cost. So I just want to be clear, and I'm not saying that this is the wrong decision, but I just want to be clear as to, that's quite a lot of money. That's a substantial portion of a car park. So I think we just need to understand why B is so much better than A at 2.1, and particularly given the comment at 5.1, section 1151 officers' comments, increase the MRP, this will be covered by rental income, but there's a 10-year rent-free period and the lease doesn't start until 2027, so there will be no recovery until 2039. Obviously, in reality, the authorities will be merged, but from an accounting point of view, that doesn't seem like a great position for us to be in. So I'd just like some clarity on that. As I say, it may be just me misunderstanding.
Can we take a fair question, Councillor Cope? I think there was a question about how we account for this. I think the paper said that it's done over a longer period. So from an accounting perspective, you realise some of the revenue in the rent fee period, but please, could you clarify?
Yeah, under the accounting rules, where you have a rent-free period, you have to smooth out the rental income. So even though, over the life of the lease, so even though there's a rent-free period at the beginning, there'll be a notional rental coming in, which will then be recouped when the cash starts coming in through the balance sheet. I appreciate that's quite techie, but...
Sure.
So, I don't know quite how to put this. Given we've heard comments that this council might be heading towards a section 114, does putting this into our budget, does that count as, how is that accounted for? So does it take us £250,000 worth closer? I know that's probably not the best accounting term to use, or is it still spread over that 50-year period?
So the £250,000 will be capital expenditure. So that will be, the minimum revenue provision will be over the life of the asset. So obviously a smaller charge, so it won't be a full hit of £250,000 in the year. And then as we're smoothing the rental income, that will offset that minimum revenue charge.
So is it in simple colloquial terms, is it left pocket, right pocket, more or less? So we're even Stevens, I think, Councillor Cope, is the way that plays out. Is that fair? If I'm misrepresenting it, please correct me. No. So just the way it works. And so I think there were some other points there. I could see Councillor Rise champing at the bit, so let him go first. And I know Mr. Stevens also wants.
I do just want to say, I think it's a reasonable question to ask then it always comes down to where budgets are. I think the reality is that if we weren't able to provide a long-term strategic use of that site, it would result in a long-term increase of the cost of the service of the waste collection service. So I actually think while, yes, there may be a figure which goes into our capital expenditure, if we wouldn't do that, I think we would probably see an increase much further down the line, because our waste collection service would be essentially required to take all of our rubbish to Leatherhead for disposal.
Cost of maintenance.
Yes, and there's also the cost of maintenance, which Councillor McIntyre. So I think it's the reality of where we are as a council. We are facing. I would say, as I said in my speech, we are staring down the barrel of a Section 114 notice if we don't act. That doesn't mean we shouldn't stop delivering the services that our residents depend on, and I'm pretty certain everyone in this room depends on their bins being collected, and I'm pretty certain you would be having a go at me if those bins weren't being collected properly. Thank you.
Councillor Cope, with regards to you pointing out that it is a significant sum of money, should we not do that and the site remained under our control, we'd be adding a lot of zeros onto that amount that we're discussing, which we would have to pay to get that site up to code and to be able to continue to be used.
Right. I think Councillor Rowlands, did you not have your hand up, or have I got lost? Oh, sorry, my apologies then. Right. yeah, I think this is a good example of not putting our head in the sand, a bit like the previous item. These are strategic projects that we have to make decisions on. I think it's well known that we have our moments with Surrey County Council, both in a number of different ways. I won't go into too much detail there. But this is in the best interest of our residents. This is a strategic site. And therefore it's very much the right thing to consider backing this proposal for the long-term benefits of the borough / unitary / whatever comes after us. So, without further ado, are we happy with the recommendation as documented?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, good. Right, a couple more bits of business, so stay alert, everybody. Executive working groups. Is this the one which is just because the clocks have changed and we're okay? So we have to just we have to re-agree this because we're into the new what do you call it again? Something year. Sorry, municipal year. We're in the new municipal year, everybody. So happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed the party. So we just have to consider this paper. It hasn't changed at all, apart from probably the date on the top. Are we happy with the recommendation as documented? Agreed. Okay, if anybody did have comments, I assume you would have asked them last time. Oh, please, Councillor
It's
Rise.
just with regards to the heads of terms with the property and economic development working group, where it says the substitute is the portfolio holder for environment reclamation with me / deputy leader. I think maybe we can just we don't require the deputy leader is now another person, so we don't need the words deputy leader in the substitutes.
And I'm sure Councillor Ashby would be more than delighted if you add his new title into his one. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind just doing, I think you can do that under delegated powers afterwards, can't you? Thank you. So thank you for pointing that out. Appointments to outside bodies. I think there's broad consensus on maintaining the status quo, as in continuity. That's what I picked up from the review. We have a couple of gaps where new people have been proposed. We've had a couple of gaps where people have stepped into other people's shoes. For example, Councillor Kang has kindly stepped in to say that he'll engage with the Heathrow Forum, which is now known as the Noise and Airspace Community Forum, on our behalf. So thank you to everybody for what you're doing with the external bodies. We do, I think, have 2 items where we have opposing nominations. Is that correct? So let's just quickly drift to those. I believe one is Camberley Town Football Club, which has been Councillor Rakes, and thank you for joining us, for the last 2 years. And I think Councillor White would like to be considered. I don't know, I can't see Councillor White online. Oh, there's a parish meeting, that's right, that's right. We do manage to organise these to clash all the time. I'm not saying you should change it, by the way, but I don't know, Councillor Garrett, do you know why Councillor White was particularly keen on this one, if you'd like to represent her in any way?
If you cut her arm off, you would see football through
right,
pretty
okay.
much the whole of her body.
Okay.
In fact, at some meetings, I think she's watching Everton games when she should be in.
Right.
Damn. We're on the... Actually, so basically, that's the link. I mean, she's a massive football fan.
Right.
But it's not to say that Councillor Rakes isn't, but that's the reason she put her hand in.
Fine. I have to admit I've been a bit remiss and forgot to ask my son what happened at the last game at Goodison, but there we are, because he's an Everton fan as well. I shall ask. They won. Fine. Thank you, Councillor Rakes. I shall engage in that conversation with my lad later. Yep.
Just to say, my understanding is that Councillor White has previously been a representative on this organisation.
Yeah. So, Councillor Rakes, you've done it for the last 2 years. Could you just give us a bit of an overview, what your engagement has been, what you see as the challenges ahead, and that might help the executive make a decision on continuity versus change?
Sure. The key things I've been involved with over the last couple of years, actually, is the development project at Camberley Town. They've got quite an ambitious planning project. I went through with them in the previous council year, what they were trying to achieve, the kind of business plan the way they thought that might work. And I've been trying to give them some advice in terms of planning. I'm not sure that's been very helpful to them. They certainly haven't enjoyed the advice I've given them. But I believe that comes to planning in June. I felt comfortable to support them in that because I'm not in planning in any way. I'm happy to support them in that. I've also been involved with the youth, Cambridge Town Youth Football, if I get that name right, in terms of keeping track on the pitches, the public pitches in parks and recreation grounds, and in inspections. I haven't made a friend of Glendale, I don't think, in the last couple of years. At about this time of year, typically, when they're re-sowing and reseeding. So I've enjoyed my involvement. I'd like to see the project that I've been involved with in the last couple of years in terms of their development further through the process. And I was Volunteer of the Year at Woking in 2022. Unfortunately, I found myself in this job and had to drop my involvement. But I was also on the board of the Supporters Trust. So I'm not blue through and through, but I am red and white through and through.
Thank you, Councillor Rakes. So, yes, please, Councillor Rise.
Does the Constitution require us to only allow one appointment?
I think it would come down to negotiations with the organisation themselves, but I mean, we can ask the question of the organisation.
Right. So has anybody else got any questions for Councillor Rakes? Or right. So I think where Councillor Rise is taking us, if I could steer my colleagues, I don't believe we should change for change's sake. It appears that Councillor Rakes is dutifully doing the best to his ability to support that organisation. So I think for continuity reasons, especially with an exciting opportunity coming up, I would recommend that Councillor Rakes stays with it. Equally, Councillor White is clearly passionate as well. So I'd like to suggest we take on board Councillor Rise's suggestion of at least offering a second member, if that seems appropriate to you, Councillor Rakes. Yeah.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, and exactly. And if nothing else, then they could, as a minimum, there could be a substitution there. Is that okay, Ms Willis? Yeah. Okay. Are we so?
That's to further add my support, because the Surrey Heath Sports Council was disbanded last municipal year. So I think trying to find ways to increase engagement between the Borough Council and any sport organisation is something I would encourage no matter what. So I would be very happy to nominate Councillor White as the second member to Camberley Town.
Very good. Okay, and we look forward to seeing how their new stadium goes up at Goodison. Right. And the next one I think we should talk about before we come to a formal decision on this item is I think Councillor Quinn has made I don't know what the right word is, pitch, or wants to make a pitch for cash, which Councillor Cope has been managing to date the last 2 years. Councillor Quinn, do you want to state your case and then we'll let Councillor Cope respond?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, firstly, can I say it's nothing against Councillor Cope at all. I know this is listed as a new 2-year appointment, so that's why I put my name for it. I don't think it's stepping into Councillor Cope's shoes, and I'm sorry if he feels that way. But yeah, so this is a new term, and I think it's a really important time to step up. As we've heard tonight, the organisation is in a vulnerable situation, especially with the pressure on the council's finances. And I saw this firsthand with cash when I was able to give them a ward councillor grant for a portable laptop. And this is something that I realised that we can't fund as a council anymore. We can't do those ward councillor grants. But I think it made a real difference. I mean, they use them to get out in the community and help residents directly. And that's exactly the kind of community-driven action that I want to support. And I was elected to represent the needs of some of the most vulnerable residents in our borough. And that's at the centre of what I do and what Councillor Rowlands does as well. And I noticed he mentioned the poverty report earlier about 1 in 5 children in St Michael's living in fuel poverty. I've seen some of that. I've worked closely with accident tenants and others facing real challenges. And I've seen how citizens' advice is really important for them when times are tough. And obviously we're heading into a very difficult period. There's been decisions obviously made by the county council and made by the government. But even though it's my party, I recognise that some of the decisions have had real impacts on people in the community, and that's why they're reaching out to citizens' advice. And I think I can bring both compassion and practical skills to help guide the organisation through the rough waters ahead. So that's my pitch. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Quinn. I'm sorry, I forgot to do my mic. Councillor Cope, do you want to give a bit of an update on how the relationship has gone over the last 2 years and what the challenges are, etc.? You know, free form, whatever you think is appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. And obviously, no problem at all in Councillor Quinn putting his name forward. I'm sure he'd also do a great job in this role. Over the past 2 years, I've found this a really enjoyable outside body to be a part of. It's one of the ways where, you know, these guys are on the front line working with our most vulnerable residents. And I think it's some of the most important funding that this council provides, frankly, to outside bodies. I should remember shortly after being elected, working with Councillor Lee on external partnerships to help secure ring-fence funding for Surrey Heath Citizens Advice. And I remember distinctly Councillor Lee saying that if me and him were agreeing on something, then it must be the right decision. It's a period of change. For us in local government, and it's a period of change for citizens' advice. I'm going to start using the acronym LCA, which means Local Citizens Advice, because I've got into the lingo. And away from funding, which is obviously the biggie, LCAs are affected by local government reorganisation, but also other structures, in particular NHS structures. And there's a lot of discussion around at the moment about how LCAs can better work together to streamline efficiencies and also put themselves in a better place to work with larger local authorities. Obviously, Surrey Heath LCA is comparatively quite small, so it's going to have to look in future as to how it's going to work with neighbouring LCAs. As I say, there's a lot of complexity for us because on the one hand, we're looking at a local government structure, which is Surrey, and we're looking at an NHS structure, which is Frimley, mainly outside of Surrey, and balancing that and maintaining those two relationships is very important to Surrey Heath Citizens Advice. I've been a part of these discussions over the past 2 years. I feel I've got a good working relationship with Greg, the chairman. Enjoy regularly attending their meetings and being a part of their decision-making process. So that would be my very brief pitch and update in terms of what I think I've added over the past couple of years.
Thank you, Councillor Cope. And thank you to everybody that's doing those important roles in supporting and liaising with the bodies. Any questions for either the party there? Councillor Rice.
Never turn down an opportunity to ask a question. Councillor Cope, you just talked about with the local government reorganisation, have the citizens' advices and kind of national citizens' advice organisation kind of given advice to them of how they should structure themselves with LGR? Are they looking at potentially covering in Surrey with the new unitary authority areas?
I have to be careful what I say because I know they're very particular about this. This is not about sort of merging, but it's very much about collaboration. And yes, they do get guidance from national citizens' advice. Problems have slightly been exacerbated, obviously, because we're next door to Woking as well, which I forgot to mention earlier. And Woking Citizens Advice has got serious funding challenges, which is pushing people into neighbouring citizens' advices, and that's putting additional strain on the services provided. But as I say, I think the main challenge they've got is this sort of slightly odd position Surrey Heath is in, where on the one hand they're working with Frimley at an NHS level, which is obviously something they deal with day to day a lot. And then on the other hand, they're dealing with Surrey from a local government point of view, which they're conscious of in future is where they're going to get a lot of their funding from. So it's managing those two relationships, which I think is the big challenge for them over the next couple of years.
So, listen, thank you, Councillor Cope. In the interest of time, I'm going to slightly steer this conversation. Councillor Quinn, thank you very much for your offer of contributing in this space. I note that you are taking on an additional responsibility this year. I think Miss Gomes Trust you're down for. I think we've got an insight into the complexity of some of the situations within citizens' advice at the moment, and I recognise some of the things Councillor Cope said from my involvement in Surrey Heath Partnership, where these things are discussed in open forum, the challenges. And I think even the stakeholder call we had as a function of LGR, the recognition that there's some kind of change going to be required, but nobody quite sure what it is until the Ministry of Magic tells us. So I would like to suggest that we respectfully decline Councillor Quinn's offer, and we leave it for continuity reasons with Councillor Cope, and we leave you more time to support the Miss Gomes Trust. But if the other executive members feel differently, please shout now. No. Okay. So therefore, we've concluded that Councillor Rates continues. Councillor White, for many long years, by the way, Councillor Rates continues in his role at Camberley Town. We look to see if they would be open to an additional member, and as I said, I think we go with Councillor Cope. If we do want to just suggest to, citizens' advice, if they're happy to take a second one or they're happy to take a substitute, then maybe that's a way of supporting Councillor Quinn in his commitment to our community as well. Is that okay, Ms Willis? Very good. Right, we've got one left, I think. Are we okay with that one? So are we agreed on that item, everybody? Agreed. I got there in the end. I've got one left, I think. Yeah, so, actually, in regard to that, thank you, sorry. So a little bit of retrospective thinking, but we didn't technically have nominations from the community group in that last section. We have taken the default position that we think it's because Councillor Wheeler's enjoying well-earned holiday. So in what we just agreed to, we assumed a rollover position for the community group. Should they come back and tell us they all want to resign from things like the Chobham Common Liaison Group and the Fair Oaks Airport Consultative Group, I would be extremely surprised. Okay? We okay with that, Executive? Very good. And hopefully Councillor Wheeler will be kind enough to acknowledge our magnanimous nature there. So if we move on to the outside bodies, I think Councillor McIntyre, you might be a late runner on one of these positions. Is that a nomination on one of these positions? Is that correct?
I am always late when it comes to running, but yes, I think it would be sensible to combine all of the armed forces type roles together under the umbrella of the Armed Forces Champion, and therefore I would like to enter my name into the box I haven't put it in.
Right, okay. So where we've ended up, I think, from this council is that we're not putting forward a nomination for Adults and Health Select Committee, is that correct? Or have I got that wrong?
I don't believe there's any nominations.
No nominations from us, that's fine. And we're not planning to put anybody forward to support the Pensions Committee of Surrey. We already have Councillor Kang, who thank you for his service in there. It's not one I would be putting my name forward very quickly. So thank you to them for doing that. So, but we won't take up the additional post unless any group leaders are telling me any differently. No, good. So
just for the record, Councillor Thorne would have been really interested, but because he's the job he's got, he can't do it.
Yeah, no, we recognise that, and I think that it was really appropriate that the Mayor thanked him very much for his excellent playing at the VE Day service, and it was much respected by everybody. So yeah, you can only do what you can do. He can blow the trumpet, but he can't. If it was trumpet or whatever it's called, cornet, I always forget. But he can blow the trumpet, but he can't unfortunately take these roles. So we respect him for that. Councillor Tedder has also put her forward for the Reserves Forces Cadets Association. I am minded to steer my colleagues to say that we do consolidate all those roles, coordinating all those roles under Councillor McIntyre. She's our Armed Forces Champion. She's put her name forward for the Surrey Civilian Military Partnership, and she's suggesting she puts herself forward for the Reserve Forces. There are some synergies there, and there are some common meetings. Are we okay to go with that?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay. I think that's a wrap, and we've managed not to go into exempt, though we did dabble with it on the fringes. Councillor Rowlands.
Yeah, just
unless it's offering something substantial to every member here to stay longer. What's the item?
Sorry?
What's the item of business now?
Yeah, just to speak to this item of nominees, talking about the Arts Council. I don't think it's meant for many months.
Yeah.
They are themselves have indicated they want to disband.
Yeah. So
I think we should have, that should be noted and
fine.
Have it as one of our.
Thank you.
Arts.
So, thank you. We got that. We note that. I think Councillor Rise notes that as well. I think the members, there's a few of them on that. I think Councillor Ashby might even be on that. I'm not sure, but
There's three members. I'm aware.
We're aware of the issue.
And
we want to stay with it to the end.
Give a brief update. Obviously, as part of the Cultural Assembly, which was put together with the Cultural Strategy, that I envision that it will kind of swallow up what the Arts Council would do. But no, yes, I'm fully aware of that, and it's as on my to-do list.
Yeah, and as part of the normal portfolio update, you'll bring that to a conclusion should the need arise. But we do want to actually stay with the organisation to make sure the governance stays there to the end appropriately. Councillor Rowlands. Thank you very much, everybody. Long meeting, I know, compared to normal. Thank you for your patience. It was important that we were debating those issues in an open and transparent manner for our residents. Thank you very much.